Actually, it's good morning. It's really early in the morning right now. It's like 2 o'clock. And I was just like really bored and awake, and everybody's asleep and nobody to talk to. So I thought I'd come out here and hang out with the YouTube community and see if I could find anybody who was awake at 2 o'clock in the morning to hang out with me. But in the meantime, I was kind of cruising through the first chapter of, I'm not the first chapter, chapter 6 of Cantillon's essay, part 2, chapter 6, the increase and decrease of quantity of money to the state and a state. And it's a really good chapter. It's fairly short. And in it, he really describes like a lot of what we would typically today describe as like the inequality. But he talks about how it really takes place and how that new money coming in will eventually separate the rich from the poor, as the people who have first access to that money get to spend it at face value. But by the time it gets down to the workers' hands, essentially the people at the end of the line, once they get their hands on it, all the prices have moved up, or things have become less available to them, as the added consumption that was taking place before they got their hands on it has now deprived them of the ability to have their sustained way of life. And so what ends up happening is they start falling into poverty or having to leave the area or go find new jobs or something of that nature. So I thought I'd just read a little bit from Cantillon's essay here and, start the conversation off just to see where it goes. So again, this is chapter 6 of Cantillon's essay on economic theory. All right. Left a link down in the description for you so you can go purchase this book off of Amazon. I will get a little commission off of that, but you do not have to buy this book off of Amazon. You can get it for free at the Mises Institute just by Googling Cantillon Essay on Economic Theory. But here we go. Chapter 6, Part 2, Chapter 6, the increase and decrease of money to the state. And the abstract says, here Cantillon uses the price specie flow mechanism to analyze some of the effects of inflation. Increasing the supply of money by mining hurts some people and benefits others because certain prices and incomes rise faster than others. However, if the new money is accumulated and saved by those who successfully export goods, either by superior quality or more efficient transportation, it will lead to a higher standard of living. And now, this is essentially what has happened here in the United States. Now, if you can remember, we used to be a production nation. We used to produce the world's greatest stuff. We would export that stuff to the entire globe, and the globe would send us their money, and we raised our standard of living. That's basically, in a nutshell, how it happened. And people wonder why it is that they used to be able to have like a regular 9 to 5 job and be able to have a house and car and wife and kids and all the other stuff. And nowadays, that seems like it's just an impossibility. Well, this is the inequality that grows because of the new money that comes in, not because we're producers and savers. See, if we were producers and savers, it would be a whole different story. But we are debtors in this nation, and it's always about ever increasing amounts of debt. And that new money coming in, it separates the rich from the poor. Now, the way Cantillon describes it is with a silver mine. But if you can imagine the Federal Reserve and the printing of money being like the silver mine, it essentially has the same effect on the economy. Now, again, Cantillon is hundreds of years old, talking horses and wagons and stuff like that. Today we have cell phones and airplanes, so it is a little bit of a different story today comparatively to what it was. But the underlying economic forces, I still believe, are very prevalent today. All right, so here we go. We're just going to start diving into it and see where the conversation goes. If gold or silver mines were found in a state and considerable quantities of minerals were extracted from them, the owners of these mines and entrepreneurs and all the workers there will increase their expenditures in proportion to the wealth and the profit they make. They will also lend this money they'll also lend the money they have over and above what they need for their expenses and earn interest. So right there, that is a very familiar story. The people who borrow the money first will then be able to raise their standard of living essentially from it by increasing their expenditures. Now, granted, that is money that's due back, but still the first money that comes out there, the people who have access to it, what do they do with it? They spend it on all their wonderful things that they want to own in their life. And then um, And of course, like, if you think about it, like if you're getting new money in from working in business and all this other stuff, once you have paid for your standard of living, then most of the time you're probably going to end up saving some of it, but then investing it as well. And that's kind of what they were saying, what he was saying there. All this money, whether lent or spent, will enter into circulation and will not fail to raise the prices of commodities and goods in all the channels of circulation it enters. Now, that's important to remember because a lot of times we just take in the assumption that just, they increase the amount of money that's in circulation and all the prices go up. But it's not that way. The increase the money, yes, and will that cause prices to go up? Yes, but it has to enter into those particular channels, and that's what Cantillon was saying. All this money, whether lent or spent, will enter into circulation and will not fail to raise the prices of the commodities and goods in all the channels of circulation it enters. So if it doesn't enter that channel, it doesn't raise the prices of it, right? So it has to enter into that particular channel. Increased money will bring about increased expenditures, and this will cause an increase of the market price in the in the good years and into a lesser degree in the bad years. Everybody agrees that the abundance of money or an increase in its use in exchange raises the prices of everything. This truth is substantiated in experience by quantity of money brought to Europe from America for at least 2 centuries. Mr. Locke, I'm not sure why he's referring to Mr. Locke. I think it was earlier in the essay he was talking about it, but Mr. Locke lays it down as a fundamental maxim that the quantity of goods in proportion to the quantity of money is a regulator of the market prices. I have tried to elucidate this idea in the preceding chapters. He has clearly seen that the abundance of money makes everything more expensive. Now, this is what a common narrative that you hear out there. I mean, money printer go burr, prices go up, right? And this is what he says here: seeing that the abundance of money makes everything more expensive. But, right, very big but, he has not considered how this happens. Right? And that's what I try to tell people as well. Because so many people are just money printer go up or money printer go off, prices go up. What else do you need to know? Well, how does that happen? Like, why does the money printer make the prices go up? And is it just necessarily the money printer that is doing it? All right. The great difficulty of this question consists in knowing in what way and in what proportion the increase of money raises the prices of things. I have already noted that the acceleration or the great pace in the circulation of money in exchange is equivalent to a certain degree, an increase in actual money. He's talking about money velocity right there. The more a dollar changes hands. And if a dollar changes hands more often, what it's doing is it's doing more purchases, more consumption. If there's more consumption, supply demand imbalances begin to take place. And this is, again, no money is added, just circulation of money. The increase of money velocity will essentially do the same thing as increasing the quantity of money. Right? Now let me read that again. I have already noted that the acceleration or the great pace in the circulation of money in exchange is equivalent to a certain degree, an increase in the actual money. I have also noted that an increase or decrease of prices in a distant market, domestic or foreign, influences local market prices. And now that's also something to think about, in that if there is a particular commodity or item that is being purchased or sold or produced in a foreign land, it can have impact on the local market. Okay? Very much like why it is that we don't produce TVs here is because not like we don't have the technology to do it. It's just that the foreign competition is so good at it that we would have to produce TVs at a much lower price that wouldn't be profitable to us considering what the neighbors can do. So the production in the commodity and the items of a foreign country can have a very big impact on the local economy. Um, On the other hand, money flows through so many retail channels that it seems impossible not to lose sight of it. seeing that having been amassed to make being amassed to make large sums, it is distributed in small amounts in exchange, and then gradually accumulated again to make a large payment. For these operations, it is necessary to constantly exchange between gold, silver, and copper money according to the requirements of exchange. It is also usually the case that an increase or decrease of hard money in the state is not perceived because it comes into a state from foreign countries by such imperceptible means and proportions that it's impossible to know exactly the quantity which enters or leaves the state. So even there, what Cantillon was saying is that there's no way of knowing exactly how much money is even in the state itself. Like here, the United States has the world reserve currency, and although we pretty much use dollars here in the United States exclusively, outside the United States, they use dollars or they use other currencies, but the dollar is very well desired outside of the United States. And that now has dollars leaving the United States, which makes you wonder how many dollars are actually in the United States comparatively to how much has been printed up. Like, your money printer go off, but if it leaves the state, and is like if it leaves the country and it doesn't stay here, then really does it start creating the inflationary scenario, considering that the quantity of money here in the country may not have increased if all the printed money was to have left. Not saying that's what happened, I'm just saying if that was the case, right? So understanding that, like, all the money that goes off, in not knowing exactly how much of that is here in the United States, doesn't give us a real clear picture of what it is that's creating the inflationary scenario. Because again, just because the money printer goes off doesn't mean that all that money stayed, right? Now, granted, a bunch of it stayed in our banking system, and I mean, I'm not trying to say that it all left. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying take on the theory of it, right? The idea that it could happen. Um, However, all these operations happen before our eyes and everybody takes a direct part in them. I therefore venture to offer a few observations on the subject, even though I may not be able to give an exact or precise account. In general, an increase of hard money in the state will cause a corresponding increase in consumption, and it will gradually produce increased prices. That's important to understand right there. The new money coming in doesn't do anything until you start spending it and increase your consumption. Once the consumption increases, then you start having the gradual increase in prices. So again, like the money printer going off doesn't necessarily cause the inflation, it's the consumption, right? It's the added consumption that it starts to create. If the increase in hard money comes from gold and silver mines within the state, the owners of these mines, the entrepreneurs, the smelters, the refiners, and all the workers will increase their expenses in proportion to their profits. Their households will consume more meat, wine, or beer than before. They will become accustomed to wearing better clothes, having finer linens, and to having more ornate houses and other desirable goods. Does this sound familiar? I mean, like, as soon as you start making the money, you want nicer houses, nicer cars, nicer clothing, going on better vacations, all the stuff, right? You want to be able to enjoy the higher standard of living from the added money that you have. Consequently, they will give employment to several artisans who did not have that much work before and who, for the same reasons, will increase their expenditures. And that also makes sense. Like if you start, you want a better house, you got this new money that comes in, you have a better wage or whatever, and you're thinking, man, I would like to remodel my house, I'd like to make it a bigger house. Well, now you're going to start hiring people to do that. I mean, you might do it yourself, but for the most part, people will be hiring other people to do that. So this is, again, like the next step in the new money and the people who have first access to it. So you got it first, and then now you're hiring people, they have access to it, right? Um, Okay, consequently, they will give employment to several artisans who did not have that much work before, and who, for the same reasons, will increase their expenditures. All this increased expenditures on meat, wine, wool, etc., necessarily reduces the share of the other inhabitants in the state who do not participate in the wealth of these mines in question. So again, this is like, the people at the end of the line, they have last access to it. Now you have, right, this separation that's taken place. There's inequality happening. The people who have first access to the money, they got more wine, more beer, more meat, more clothing, better houses, all the stuff, right? And the people at the end of the line are now what, suffering from the higher prices that move up from it. It necessarily reduces the share on the inhabitants in the state who did not participate in the first of the wealth of the mines in question. The bargaining process of the market with the demand for meat, wine, wool, etc., being stronger than usual, will not fail to increase their prices. So you see what's happened here? Like, this new money has come in. The people who had first access to that money wanted nicer things. The things that they were buying started spreading that money out to the handful of people who had first access to it with them, right? They were like the next in line for the first. And then as they started increasing their expenditures as well, now everybody at the end of the line is suffering from this. And this is, again, Cantillon's describing this from hundreds of years ago, but it's very much the same way going on today. Um, these high prices will encourage farmers to employ more land to produce the following year. Uh, right? And this is something that we talk about very much on here, is that if you have an increase in price, then most likely you're going to have an increase in investment going into that, right? So this is what Cantillon was describing too, right? They want to meet that market demand. If you're all of a sudden paying, a whole bunch of money for ribeyes, the people who produce ribeyes are going to want to produce more ribeyes to take advantage of those high prices, right? All right, so these prices will encourage farmers to employ more land to produce the following year. And these same farmers will profit from the increased prices and will increase their expenditures on their families like the others. So the people who are getting, like, again, that money is being spent on because of the increase in consumption. And it's not even like these are, like, you think about it, this is the general condition now. It's not like people are just going, hey man, I need you to produce more. They are looking at the general market demand increasing and they're like, yeah, let's go into it, right? um, okay, those who will suffer from these high prices and increased consumption will be, first of all, the property owners, which is really interesting to think about. The people who will suffer, let me read that again. Those who will suffer from the higher prices and increased consumption will be, first of all, the property owners. That's so weird to think, because everybody kind of looks at, like, the greedy property owners as the reason that we have this problem or the inequality that's taken place. But really, when this first happens, it's the property owners who suffer the most on it. And why? Because during their terms of leases in their domestic, because of, jeez, let me slow down here. First of all, the property owners, during their term of their leases, then their domestic servants and all the workmen or fixed wage earners who support their families on salaries. So these are the people who suffer the most, right? The property owners. They're let me make sure I got the list of them right here. The property owners, then their domestic servants, and all the workmen or fixed wage earners who support their families and salaries. Now, this is interesting to think about, because it almost sounds like like they would be the people with the money first, right? They would have first access to the money. But that's not necessarily true, because what they have done is they have leases and rents that are, like, set for a set amount of time until they expire. And they can't increase that until that expiration takes place. So now, as all the prices are moving up, they're stuck at the same wages. You see? And all the people who work for them and everybody else after them, they're all stuck at the same wages as the prices start to move up. So they're the first ones to feel the pain from it, even though, like I said, most of the time when we think about it, they're like the narrative would say, that they're the greedy property owners who are, screwing all the little guys out there. All right. They all must diminish their expenditures in proportion to the new consumption, which will compel a large number of them to immigrate and to seek living elsewhere. The property owners will dismiss many of them, and the rest will demand a wage increase in order to live as before. So again, the property owners will dismiss many of them, right? Basically get fired because they can't afford to pay them anymore, and the rest will demand higher wages in order to live as before. So basically they're going to raise the wages on some and fire a bunch of other people. Does this sound familiar? Right? I mean, this is like anyway. Okay. In this manner, uh, it is in this manner that a considerable increase of money from the mines increases consumption, and by diminishing the number of inhabitants, greater expenditures result by those who remain. So again, as this new money comes in, it's driving out the bottom end, right? The people at the very end of the line getting this money, their increased in expended or their increase in standard of living, not the increase in the cost of their standard of living or their to sustain their life is no longer something that they can handle anymore because the wages that they earn are not going to cover it anymore. So they begin to leave. Again, this is how the inequality really starts to take place because the only people who are really left are the people who are getting that first new money coming in and the people who might have just gained enough of the wages in order to stick around long enough, but everybody else is bailing out because they can't do it anymore. Right? They can't handle like and here in the United States, they can't even leave, so they just become homeless, right? So if you can't leave and there's nowhere to go, then you're just homeless on the street, and that's probably one of the reasons why we're seeing so much homeless now taking place within all these major cities going across the country. And I think it's kind of interesting when people say, "Oh man, you should go to this city. They don't have nearly as many homeless there." And then I think a lot of times those cities that they're talking about are maybe like kind of high output or high producing cities like maybe say for example down in Texas it might be like oil money or something like that. Production of oil is now giving these working class jobs, and then the filtering down the line gives everybody the ability to maybe get a shot at having a standard of living. Where you come up here to Portland, Oregon, and you have literally like the working class jobs don't even come close because there is no real production taking place here outside of maybe some of the agricultural like logging and fishing and stuff like that, but that's pretty much on the smaller proportion of the money that's really coming into this country or into this particular area, considering like remote workers and all the other stuff that goes with it. We're not exactly like, a high production area up here. So you would imagine that the money that is coming in would be a separation of the rich and the poor because really you have a service job that doesn't provide you with a decent living. And then everybody else who is making like, decent money on these remote workers and all the whatever, jobs that they have that's not necessarily within the producing and in distribution kind of aspect. All right, well, I'm getting tired here, guys. I'm kind of mumbling a little bit. Let's see if I can get through this. Okay. If money continues to be extracted from the mines, the abundance of money will increase all prices to such a point that not only will the property owners raise their rents considerably when the leases expires and resume their old lifestyles, increasing their servant wages proportionally, but the artisans and workmen will increase their prices of the articles they produce so high that there will be considerable gains by buying them from foreigners who make them much cheaper. See, now this is the problem that we really now face is that if you are a producing, saving nation and you have increased your standard of living, much like what happens here, right? They increase the rents considerably and then they start paying everybody a higher wage in order to deal with the rent increases and the higher cost. And now the production that those people are doing is no longer competing against the foreign producers out there. Right? Everybody increased their wages, they increased their standard of living, they increased all this stuff, they increased their product prices, and now foreign competition is saying, "How much are you charging? We got that stuff a whole lot cheaper." Right? And again, like you can recognize this happening here in the United States just over the last, century. All right. This will naturally encourage several people to import products at a lower price from foreign factories, and this will gradually ruin the artisans and manufacturers of the state who will be unable to sustain themselves by working at such low rates because of the high cost of living. Again, like we can blame it on politics all day long, but if Cantillon is describing it from hundreds of years ago, then there's no point in blaming politics on it. We know what's causing the issues. Right? Let me read this one again. Right? This is talking about the foreign competition now competing against the domestic manufacturers. It says this will naturally encourage several people to import products at a lower price. So again, think of Walmart, right? Bringing in all the cheap Chinese goods. This will import products at a lower price from foreign factories, and this will gradually ruin the artisans and manufacturers of the state who will be unable to sustain themselves by working at such low rates because of the high cost of living. He says it right there. It will ruin the manufacturers, right? Like wondering why we don't have manufacturing like we used to. It's because of the way that the new money has come into the system. It ruins the manufacturing of the domestic location as it starts bringing in that foreign production. When the overabundance of money from the mines has diminished the number of inhabitants in the state, accustomed those who remain to excessive expenditures, raise the prices of farm products and the wages for labor to high levels, and ruin the manufacturers of the state by purchasing of foreign products by property owners and mine workers. Right? I mean, again, right there, because of the high prices. Right? When the overabundance of money from the mines has diminished the number of inhabitants, right? So, like, even think about it, like the population here in the United States, like the babies are not being, no, the population growth is diminishing, right? Okay, so overabundance of money from the mines diminishes the number of inhabitants in the state, accustomed those who remain to excessive expenditures. So the people here now have this luxurious life, right? Again, like this luxurious life costs a lot of money. You can't necessarily afford kids when if you have a luxurious life. And then what ends up happening is that the raised prices of farm products and wages within that area, right, for the labor and high levels, it ruined the manufacturing of that state. You can't afford to pay these people that kind of price and be competitive. See, everybody says, well, if they paid a fair wage, they can't. They can't pay a fair wage because it's competing against foreign production out there. All right. Ruin the manufacturers of the state by purchasing foreign productions by the property owners and the mine workers. The money produced by the mines will necessarily go abroad, to pay for the imports. So now they're pulling money out of the mine and buying stuff outside of the United States. Money is now leaving the United States out of that particular state. So again, like the money was being extracted from the mines and it would go into the local economy. But as the local economy started bringing up the prices, foreign competition started taking advantage of those high prices. And now the money is leaving the state, bringing in the foreign production. And this is what ended up essentially ruining the Roman Empire, was this exact thing right here. See, they went on this big, huge war effort to try and keep the money keep pouring in, right? Because if, they were such a luxurious life, they weren't producing anything for themselves, so they had to have this constant new money coming in, or else the whole thing collapses. And eventually it did when they couldn't do it anymore. All right, this will gradually impoverish the state and make it, in a way, dependent on the foreigners to whom it is obligated to spend the money every year as it is extracted from the mine. So if you want to maintain this standard of living, if you want to maintain this elevated life, you're going to have to pull that money out of the mines, all right, pull the silver out and send it off to foreign production. And that's what he says here. This will gradually impoverish the state, right? Because the more money you're leaving, the less money you have. This will gradually impoverish the state and make it, in a way, dependent on the foreigners to whom it is obligated to send money every year as it is extracted from the mines. So you think about that again, like we would not have we wouldn't have the stuff we have in this country if it wasn't for the foreign production. We are somewhat dependent on the foreign productions, and we're obligated to send them money. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that we had severed ourselves from the gold standard back in the 70s, we would have sent them all our gold and we would have been in pain and misery. But instead, we started sending them fiat, right? We cut into the fiat currency. Anyway, let's go back to the essay here. Send money every year that is extracted from the mines. The great circulation of money, which was widespread in the beginning, ceases. Right? Ceases. Poverty and misery follow, and the exploitation of the mine appears to only be advantageous to the employed, the people who are employed in them, and the foreigners who profit by it. Now, think about that for just a minute, right? The new money that was coming in the very beginning was awesome for everybody. The people who have first access to it, right? And they're spending their money. There was a handful of people at the end of the line. It sucked for them. But for the most part, people got a little trickle down effect from all this new money coming in. Now, they liked that idea up until the point that they started raising their standard of living and it started competing, or the foreign production started competing against their domestic manufacturers, which was their jobs. Now the domestic manufacturers are leaving as ever increasing amounts of foreign production come in. Now you have this huge separation between the rich and the poor, the people who have first access to the money and they buy in the foreign production. It's advantageous to the people who are in the process of bringing in that foreign production and selling it to those people, but everybody else is suffering in poverty and misery. And once the new money turns off, everybody falls into poverty and misery. The great circulation of money, which was widespread in the beginning, ceases. Poverty and misery follow, and the exploitation of the mines appears to only be advantageous to those employed in them and the foreigners who profit thereby. So again, it's just like the new money continuing to pour in is going to create a situation in which that you lose your job and, everybody falls into pain and misery when it all turns off. All right. This is approximately what has happened in Spain since the discovery of the Indies. As for the Portuguese, since the discovery of the gold mines in Brazil, they have nearly always used foreign articles and manufactured goods, and it seems that they work the mines only for the account and the advantage of foreigners. All the gold and silver that these two states extract from the mines does not supply them with more precious metals in circulation than others. England and France usually even have more. So you get that? Like these are two countries that are supposed to be doing fairly well, Spain and Portugal, but because they're pulling all this money out of the mines and buying all this foreign production, they don't produce anything themselves. And let me read it again. That's exactly what the United States is facing, right? This is approximately what happened to Spain since the discovery of the Indies. As for the Portuguese, since the discovery of the gold mines in Brazil, they have nearly always used foreign articles and manufactured goods. Sound familiar to the United States? And it seems that they work the mines only for the account and the advantage of the foreigners, because they work these mines and the only people who really get the money at the end is some foreign country out there, because they bought their products. All the gold and silver that these two states extract from the mines does not supply them with more precious metals in circulation than others. England and France usually even have more. This is again, the United States pushing their money out there to the rest of the globe. And if we didn't have the money printer, we would be out of money, right? We would all be living in poverty and misery. All right. Now, if the increase of money in the state comes from the balance of foreign trade, i.e., sending abroad articles of manufactured goods of greater value and quantity than is imported, and consequently receiving the surplus in money. So he's basically saying that if you have a surplus trade, like we here in the United States, we run trade deficit, but if we had a trade surplus, everything would be good, because even if we were buying foreign production, we're exporting more stuff and bringing in more money than we're actually buying from the foreign production. So he's saying that would be okay, so long as you have, a balance of trade that was equal or at least positive. All right. i.e., sending abroad manufactured goods for the greater value of quantity that is imported and consequently receiving the surplus in money. This annual increase of money will enrich a great number of merchants and entrepreneurs in the state and will give employment to numerous artisans and workmen to provide the goods sent to the foreigners from whom the money is drawn. This will gradually increase consumption of these industrious inhabitants and will raise the price of land and labor. Again, no matter what you do, it's going to increase the consumption. And then once you increase the consumption, you're going to start increasing the prices, because that's what he says right there. This will gradually increase the consumption of the industrious inhabitants and will raise the prices of land and labor. But the industrious people who are eager to acquire property will not at first increase their expenditures. This is important to remember, because only a handful of people will actually do this part of it. But this is probably one of the key things to take into consideration, because this is the same thing that's happening today. Okay? But the industrious people who are eager to acquire property, the ones who are eager to acquire property, will not at first increase their expenditures. Right? They're going to drive old busted down vehicles. They're not going to go out and hang out. They're not going to have fancy vacations. They're not going to wear nice clothes, because they're eager to be property owners. Right? The industrious people who are eager to acquire property will not at first increase their expenditures. They will wait until they have accumulated large sums from which they can draw a secure interest income independent of their occupation. So they're again, those are the two things: property owners and capitalists. He's basically saying they're going to take their money and secure some sort of interest payment on it. Whether, back in the day, I don't know if they were lending it out or whatever. They were doing their little nuanced ways of figuring it out. But here today, we got all kinds of ways of doing that. Right? Once a large number of inhabitants have acquired considerable fortunes from this money, which enters the state regularly and annually, they will not fail to increase their consumption and raise the prices of everything. Although these higher prices result in greater expenditures than they at first contemplated, they will, for the most part, continue so long as the capital lasts. It will continue so long as the capital lasts. This whole thing will continue. For nothing is easier and more pleasant to increase the family's expenditures, and nothing is more difficult or unpleasant than to decrease them. See, this is one of the reasons why I'm saying there's no fixing the system. There's no way that you can fix it, because everybody wants to increase, right? What does he say there? For nothing is easier or more pleasant than to increase a family's expenditures. Nothing is easier or more pleasant. Easier and more pleasant than to increase the family's expenditures. And nothing is more difficult or unpleasant than to decrease them. How many people can relate to that? Nobody wants to move from a house to an apartment. Nobody wants to go from driving a new truck to a busted down old car. Nobody wants to decrease their standard of living. Everybody wants to increase it. They're totally cool with increasing it, but they're very down against decreasing it. All right. If an annual and continuous balance has caused a considerable increase in the money in the state, now remember, this is being a producer saver, right? You're producing and saving. You have now pushed that out there to the foreign, buyers, and you're bringing in a considerable increase in money, right? This is like the balance of trade. It will not fail to increase consumption, raise the price of everything, and even diminish the number of inhabitants, unless additional products are drawn from abroad proportionate to the increase in consumption. So if you start increasing your consumption and all of a sudden there's not enough out there for the people down below, right? Because all of a sudden, people are eating 2 ribeyes instead of 1. Now there's not enough ribeyes. So unless there is more competition, more foreign that comes in to supply it, then you're going to have issues. And this is where he is saying, right? It will not fail to raise the price of everything and diminish the number of inhabitants in the state, so the people are going to leave unless additional products are drawn from abroad proportionate to the increase in consumption. So if you increase in consumption, you have to bring in this foreign production, or else the people are going to bail. And they're probably already going to bail because the people at the end of the line just can't handle it anyway. All right. Moreover, in the states that have acquired a considerable abundance of money, it is natural to import many goods from neighboring country where the money is rare and consequently everything is cheap. However, as money must be exchanged for these products, the balance of trade will become smaller. The cheapness of the land and labor in foreign countries where money is rare will naturally cause the building of factories and business similar to those of the state, but which will not at first be as perfect or as highly valued. Again, cheap Chinese stuff. American was just like, man, our production is so much better than Chinese stuff, but eventually they got really good at what they did, and then, it was no good for us anymore. The manufacturing wasn't. All right. In this situation, the state can retain its abundance of money, consume all its own products and a great deal of foreign products, and over and above all this, maintain a small balance of trade against the foreigner, or at least keep the balance leveled for many years. In other words, the state will import, in exchange for its commodities and manufactured goods, as much money from these foreign countries as it sends to them for the goods and products in the land it takes from them. Right? So it's just basically an equal trade. All right. If the state is a maritime state, the easiness and the low cost of shipping for the transport of its commodities and manufactured goods to foreign countries may compensate in some way for the high cost of labor caused by the overabundance of money. Now, this is also something to think about. Just because that foreigner produces it cheaper, they can't necessarily distribute it out there to the globe. However, the domestic manufacturer might have a higher cost or a higher price on their manufactured good, but they can actually distribute it. And so again, even if you produced it, it doesn't matter if you can't get it out there to the market. Even if you produced it higher, if you have the distribution channels, well, then you have a way of continuing on operations, right? And that's what he was saying there, right? If the state is a maritime state, the easiness and low cost of its shipping for transport of its commodities and manufactured goods to the foreign countries may compensate in some way for the high cost of labor caused by the overabundance of money. Therefore, the commodities and manufactured goods of this state, expensive though they may be, will continue to sell in foreign countries and sometimes will be cheaper than the manufactured goods of another state where labor is paid less. And it may be cheaper because they don't have the distribution to it. It may cost more for them to distribute it out there to the competition. And so therefore, even if you produce it higher, if you got the distribution channels, you're good, right? The high cost of transport greatly increases the price of goods sent to distant countries. However, these costs are very moderate in maritime states where there is regular shipping to all foreign ports and ships are nearly always found there ready to sail, taking on board all cargoes entrusted to them at a very reasonable freight. So again, if you have a well established distribution network, it's hard to compete against that. Right? This is not so in the states where navigation doesn't flourish. There, it is necessary to build ships especially for transport of goods, and this sometimes absorbs all the profit, and the transportation there is always very expensive, which entirely discourages commerce. Right? If you got the distribution network, you got the market. All right. England today consumes not only most of its own small production, but also a large amount of foreign products such as silks, wine, fruits, linens, in great quantities, etc. Meanwhile, she sends abroad the products of her mines and manufactured goods for the most part. No matter how expensive labor is due to the abundance of money, she does not fail to sell her products to distant countries because of her maritime advantage at prices as reasonable as those of France, where these same products are cheaper. So even though they produce them more, they can get it out there. The increased quantity of money in a state may also be caused without it. The increased quantity of money in a state may also be caused without a balance of trade by subsidies paid to this state by foreign powers, by the right, literally foreign countries, like, here's some money for you, right? By foreign powers, or warlords or whatever, handing the money over. If you think about like that kind of thing, running in like chaotic places. By the expenditures of several ambassadors. Okay, the increase. Okay, let me read that again. The increased quantity of money in the state may also be caused without a balance of trade by subsidies paid to the state by foreign powers, by the expenditures of several ambassadors or travelers wanting to stay there for political reasons, curiosity, or pleasure, or by the transfer of the property and wealth of families who choose to leave their country to seek religious freedoms or for other reasons, and to settle down in that state. So basically, money from other locations, people who have acquired money, then bringing it in, right? Not has anything to do with manufacturing or none of that stuff, right? They're just bringing it in because they just want to hang out there. They got beautiful view and nice beaches or whatever, right? They just come in with their money and start spending it. Okay, in all these cases, the sums entering the state always causes an increase in expenditures and consumption, and consequently increases the price of all goods in the channels of exchange where the money enters. Again, it has to enter in those particular channels in order to raise the consumption of it. And therefore, there the prices start to move up. Before the increase in the quantity of money, suppose that a quarter of the inhabitants of the country of the suppose that the quarter of the inhabitants of the state consume meat, wine, beer, etc. on a daily basis, and frequently acquire cloths, linens, etc., but that after the increase, a third or a half of the inhabitants consume these same things. So again, that's important to understand. They was talking about before the increase of the quantity of money, only a quarter of the inhabitants would drink beer and wine and eat meat and wear the nice clothes and all that other stuff. But after the increase, a third to a half of the inhabitants are now consuming these same things. So this is increasing the consumption. They didn't drink the beer and the wine and eat all the meat and stuff before, but now that the new money is in, they're doing it. A man who eats, okay, let's see. Okay. Consume these as before. Prices for these goods will increase, and a high price of meat will convince several of those who formed the original quarter to consume less meat than usual. Right. So this is interesting to think about. Prices for these goods will increase, and the high price of meat will convince several of those who had formed the original quarter to consume less meat than usual. So the guys who were eating meat, the quarter of the people who had the money to eat meat, they were eating the meat, but then more people started getting more money. They started buying meat as well. It increased the price of it. So the people who originally were buying meat to eat, they back off because probably, whether on a fixed income saying, hey, I cannot afford the meat anymore, right? I used to eat meat, every single day. Now I can only eat it every other day because I simply just don't have the money to do it like I used to since all the prices moved up. Think about like maybe Social Security, or something like that nature. All right. Okay, usual. Okay, a man who eats 3 pounds of meat daily will 3 pounds of meat daily. Wow. All right, a man who eats 3 pounds of meat daily will manage with 2 pounds, but he feels the reduction. Meanwhile, the other half of the inhabitants who hardly ate meat at all will not feel the reduction. All right. See, other people were like, man, this thing is so expensive, I can't afford to do it anymore. Well, if you never had it to begin with, then those increase in prices didn't really bother you, did it? because you didn't buy it in to begin with, and you couldn't afford it before, and you still can't afford it. Will not feel the reduction. The price of bread will increase gradually because of the increase in consumption, as I have often suggested, but it will be proportionally less expensive than the meat. So everybody eats bread, but not everybody was eating meat. Once you had an increase in consumption, more people started eating meat, but really everybody was eating bread the same, right? But increase in meat consumption then started increasing the price. Now, when it comes, again, he's saying, like, when it comes to, let's see here, the increase in the price of meat is noticeably felt because it causes a reduction in the consumption on the part of the small portion of the people. But the increased price of bread is less noticeable because of the decreased consumption is spread across the entire population. See, again, there was only a handful of people eating meat. Once you increase the consumption, more people started eating meat. It started putting a pressure on the people who were buying the meat originally, saying, hey, man, this stuff is expensive. I'm backing off a little bit. But if you're eating bread, everybody's eating bread. And all of a sudden, there's an increase in the consumption of bread. There's a small decrease that takes place, but that small decrease is spread across the entire population. So again, he goes on to describe it. Is noticeable felt because of the cause reduction in consumption in part of the small population, but the increased price of bread is less noticeable because of the decreased consumption is spread across the entire population. If 100,000 extra people move to a state with 10 million inhabitants, their extra consumption of bread will only amount to only 1 pound in 100, which must be subtracted from the old inhabitants. But when a man consumes 99 pounds of bread for his subsistence, jeez, for his subsistence, I can't say it. I can't say it. Okay. Okay, if he consumes 99 pounds of bread for his subsistence, Jesus, instead of 100, he will hardly feel the reduction. So that's like, you think about it. If he goes from 100 pounds down to 99 pounds, he won't notice the reduction very much. In fact, nobody will really notice it that much. I mean, yeah, is it some? It's some. You'll notice a little bit, but hardly any at all. When the consumption of meat increases, farmers increase the size of their pastures to produce more meat, and this diminishes cropland and consequently the amount of wheat produced. However, what generally causes meat to become proportionally more expensive than bread is that imports of foreign wheat are usually permitted while imports of beef are absolutely forbidden. As in the case of in England, or heavy import duties are imposed as in other states. This is the reason why rents for meadows and pastures rise in England with the abundance of money 3 times more than the rents for cropland, because what you're using it for is creating so much more of a value. All right. There is no doubt that when the ambassadors, travelers, and families move to a state, the increased consumption will cause higher prices in all the markets where they spend their money. As for the subsidies the state has received from foreign powers, they are either hoarded for the state necessities or are put into circulation. If we assume they are hoarded, they do not concern my argument, for I am considering only money in circulation. You see that? Like he says it right there. Just because you increase the money doesn't necessarily mean it's going to increase prices unless it enters into circulation. This is the reason why quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflationary scenario the Fed was looking for, is because that money never really entered circulation. And he is saying that right here in this sentence. As for the subsidies the state has received from foreign powers, they are either hoarded, right? Hoarded away, not entering circulation, or for the state's necessities, or are put into circulation. If we assume that they are hoarded, they do not concern my argument, for I am considering only money in circulation, not money that's hoarded away. Hoarded money, silverware, churches' money, etc., are resources that the state turns to in emergency situations. but are of no present utility. If the state puts these funds into circulation, it can only do so by spending them, and this will certainly increase consumption and raise the prices of all goods. Whoever receives this money will set into motion the principal business of life, which is the food, either for himself or someone else, since everything is connected to this directly or indirectly. Okay. Woo, thank you for letting me stumble through that. Chapter 6 of Cantillon's essay, talking about the increase and decrease of money to the state. Now, after reading that essay, or at least reading that chapter in the essay, it starts to make a whole lot more sense to why it is that we have a price increases like we do in some areas and almost no price increases in others, when yet the common narrative is money printer go burr, prices go up. But that's not the case. Money printer go burr, people who have first access to that money start spending that money into the economy. And as that money starts to be spent into the economy, it separates the rich from the poor. And the added consumption is what's raising the prices. All right. That's really how this goes down. We can blame, like, I love when people say it's all because of the Democrats, it's all because Republican greed, it's all because of all this other stuff. And I'm sitting back looking at this essay going, no, you're all wrong. It has to do with economic forces that are underlying that cannot change. Like, this cannot be reversed. There's no reversing the inequality that has taken place, because ultimately what you would have to do is stop the new money from coming in. And if new money stops coming in, everybody's life starts falling into pain and misery and poverty and destruction and all that other stuff, mainly because we don't produce anything for ourselves. We have to buy it from foreign producers out there. And if we are not bringing in new money, we're not bringing in new production from outside the nation. And so therefore we suffer in misery from that. All right. 1 hour into this. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Brody, for being here. We got, let me put this on so I can read. I can't read because got smudges on there. All right. What time is it? It must be like 3 o'clock in the morning now. You can't believe you guys are still awake. Brody, do you sleep, man? All right. Sorry, I just can't stop at this point. It's too early to be serious. All right. Yeah, it is. Subsistence. There we go. All right. Isn't it so funny? Like, I mean, some words, it just gets there. Like, I can see the word in my head, but it's not coming out. Like, it's not, no matter how much I try. I have to literally walk away from it and then sit down, think about it, hear it, and then try it, and then eventually I'll get it. And then it's kind of like, I don't know, like forgetting to ride a bike or something, and then all of a sudden you just realize you knew how to do it the whole time. It's something kind of like that. All right, it's great people have will of their own to learn things. Yeah, it is. All right, let's cruise down to the bottom here real quick. Money has a direct link to constitutional rights also. Well, I mean, money does. I don't think our currency does, because I think that's two different things. We got currency and money. Currency is like our fiat currency that we use. Money is gold and silver. Gold and silver is by far the only money that is constitutional. In fact, you know, where's my constitution? Uh-oh, where'd you guys go? Oh, you still here? I'm not sure if I still have my constitution here. I think I took it back in and put it on my desk. Yeah, I think I did. I put it back on my desk. Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution says that no state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender in payment of debt. So they don't say anything in there about central banking systems or anything like that. In fact, if you go and you listen to a lot of the original founders of the country, they warned against having a central banking system. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they established the Constitution the way they did, was to try and avoid stuff like that, to try and put the power as much as they could into the people themselves and tell them, hey, you are responsible for, maintaining this and keeping this nation in order and check. And since, the Constitution really isn't understood or known, and definitely not followed by the government, it doesn't really exist anymore except for those who understand it and exert their constitutional rights when they're being infringed. But as far as like a constitutional republic, I think that's kind of disappeared by now. It's like a small illusion of it, but the reality is far different from it. We as individuals still retain a constitutional rights if you know how to protect them and enforce those constitutional rights, because they're constantly coerced and manipulated out of you. You don't believe me, just look at your social security card. So anyway, um, all right. Even if you liked it, doesn't, but it does. I agree, disagree. Doesn't matter. Being able to civilly have an open-minded discussion to consider other ideas is important. Oh, absolutely, it is. And like it's not a matter. I mean, it's like you can disagree all you want, right? You can say, "Man, I just like I'm not seeing it that way. I don't believe it." It's another thing to tell somebody they, are complete dumb shits for even thinking that way. If that's the case, it makes it very difficult to have a discussion or take in any kind of consideration of their opinions. Now, I personally am very, very stuck on my view of monetary policy because of how deeply I have researched it and how much that I have come to the conclusions that this monetary policy has been set forth in motion from decades ago. And I see it very clearly. Now, a lot of other people want to think that the monetary policy is flying from the seat of their pants and that they're making these decisions, these snap decisions on the economy, and like really have no idea of what they're doing. A lot of people want to take that consideration, and they very well have internalized all the information and facts and understandings and the political environments and all that other stuff to form that conclusion and that theory. I very much wholeheartedly disagree with all that stuff. So when somebody says, "Hey, it's Biden's fault, it's Bidenomics," I have a tendency to say, "Okay, you know what? I'm not interested. Like, I'm not interested in hearing it. I'm not interested in any of that stuff, because no way in the world did Biden have any anything to do with the monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world that John Williams was talking about. Didn't have anything to do with Ben Bernanke's speech talking about the gold machine and the heart of the credible threat theory. Didn't have anything to do with the August 20th speech, from August 27th of 2020 speech with Jerome Powell, talking about how they were going for average inflation rate over time, and that appropriate monetary policy would be seeking to achieve inflation that is moderately above 2% for some time. That was far before anything that came out that would be considered Bidenomics, right? So like I can't internalize any of that Bidenomics stuff because it's simply just not accurate. It's like, you know I don't know, it's just like I can't take it in, because it's just like nothing in there has any kind of reality to the monetary policy itself. It doesn't have a lot of like input to like what happened to people's lives because they conditioned themselves to be absorbed by that. I could say that would be true. I think a lot of people have conditioned themselves to be impacted by the political environment. I don't. Like, I'm not. And as much as people want to drag me into it and say, "Hey, yes, it does, and here's all the ways that it does," I don't see it that way. Like, people are like, "Man, your life was so much better during the Trump administration than it was during the Biden administration." No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. But I don't give Biden any credit for that, and I don't blame Trump, right? So it's just like, not, that's not true. Like, my life has gone much better every single year since I gave up drinking. Now, I don't know whose fault that was and who I can blame that on except for myself, but that was the major turning point for my life. And it didn't have anything to do with any administration. It had everything to do with the way I was thinking and me stop blaming. And in fact, it was at that point that I had given up on politics and quit looking at it altogether. Wow. Did that go hand in hand? I mean, you give up politics, your life gets better. What can I say? I mean, just like money printer go off, prices go up. Okay, well, you quit looking at politics, your life gets better. That's what happened to me. I mean, Also, UE will uh, iterate the thinking on economy the more he learns. the more fine tuning there will be. Absolutely, Captain. I mean, and that's the thing. I keep going over this information and I keep spelling it out. I'm landing at different platforms and just rehashing the same information, keep getting out the credible threat theory. And the more I do this, the more I'm becoming to understand how it's working. I can recognize it more in the mainstream media narrative that's put out there, how it is that they can control the markets. Think about it. Look at all the articles talking about mortgage rates coming down. Like the Fed hasn't done anything yet, right? This is the same thing that happened back at the end of last year after the dot plot announcement that the Fed was going to be doing 7 rate cuts this year. You remember that? There was so many people convinced. Think about all the articles and all the people talking at the time saying that the Fed is being forced, they're going to do emergency rate, all this stuff they talk about, and it just drives those interest rates down with people's anticipation of the interest rates coming. It doesn't matter. Like people keep even asking me, I'll spell out all this credible threat theory stuff, and I'll be like, listen, this is how it's done. Gold machine, neutral interest rates, zero lower bound, inflation targeting to average inflation rate over time. Here's how they do it. Make up strategies, all this stuff. They're using this to guide the markets, and you can see it through the mainstream media narratives. Don't worry about the Fed rate cuts. Just look at what they are talking about as far as the information about it, because that is really where the monetary policy is going to go. So focus in on that part of things, and I'll say all that stuff, and at the end of it, they're like, so are they going to cut next week or not? Doesn't matter. It does not matter, right? That part is so it has very little impact on the economy in the in the in the near term. It takes 6 months to a year before that rate cut will have any kind of real impact on the economy, but the market's perception leading into it is so powerful. It is incredibly powerful. In fact, it's more powerful than anything else that the Fed has. And so that's what I focus in on. I'm like, pay attention to that because that's what the Federal Reserve is using. That's the Federal Reserve's tool. It's their key policy tool. Even in good times, it's their key policy tool. And I'll keep saying that. And even that right there will still have people. So when are they going to cut, bro? Are they going to cut next week? By how much? What do you think? It's just like, that's what I already told you what I thought. All right. Are we done with questions? What's going on here? There we go. Okay, let's cruise it up here. Always, Yui, remember the more you dig through the system, the more there is reason to retain also your own opinion. It's very complex system. Yeah, Captain. I gave up following other YouTubers out there, so I wasn't aware of what they were talking about. So when I started coming out with my information, when I started breaking down the monetary policy and seeing the credible threat theory, when I started developing this credible threat theory, I knew I had something that was going to be different from what other people were saying. I didn't know how different it was actually going to be until I had broken away from listening to the other economists out there. Like, I mean, these guys are my friends. I mean, I know them personally. I mean, I got them on my contact list on my phone. I know a lot of them personally, and I quit listening to them. And not because I didn't like their information. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, I very much appreciate the hard work and dedication and everything that they put towards their channel, towards their work, towards everything that they do. I mean, I'm not trying to knock that by any means, but I needed to know that I was doing this for myself, that I was being true to my understanding of what it is that I was learning. Not that I was just regurgitating something that, somebody else had said, but that I am actually understanding the economics of this business, of the central bank, of everything truly. And it was another reason why I started coming out and doing live streams. I was thinking, man, anybody could do a recording. Anybody could do a recording. Like, I didn't edit any of my videos because of that very reason. It was just like, if I can't do this in one shot, If I can't do it like without like a script in front of me, reading from it or something of that nature, but to actually think about the information, think about what I was going to say, and then come out and spit it out on a video, I can do that. If I couldn't do that without edits, then I didn't think I could do it for real. So I never edited any of my videos because I wanted to make sure that I was doing it from my heart. And so I never edited any of my videos. And then as time went on, I'm thinking to myself, well, even though you don't edit your videos, you kind of edit because you rehearse the videos, right? If you screwed a video up, you might try it, 2 or 3 times or even 30 times if it just wasn't coming out right. And I've been that way, where I would sit there like doing a video and I just didn't like the way it sounded, or I maybe said something that I didn't think was accurate. And so I would stop the video and start it over again and just do these recordings until I got one right. And I'm thinking, well, you're just rehearsing then at that point. It's just like you might as well have a script, and memorize the script and do it that way. So it's just like, okay, let's get rid of that and let's go live. Let's do all these things live, right off, right off the cuff, right, shoot from the hip on the questions, everything, and see if you can still do this thing. And I found that doing lives are even better than recording. In fact, I can't even record a video anymore. It doesn't feel natural to me. It feels very natural to get out here and do it in a live presentation, no matter how much I stutter, how much I can't read, how much I, kind of screw things up and say right and 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 okay or whatever, how many times in a row. I don't care anymore. It's more about understanding the information and being able to present it in a way that is not fake. It is definitely real, definitely the way I understand it. It's the way I see it. It's the way I've learned it. And I think it's done quite well for me. And after not separating myself like I don't contact or have contact with these people, what I did is I separated myself in the sense that I didn't take their information in anymore, but just doing my own research into the monetary policy itself to try and figure out what it is that I could learn about the monetary policy. And then what I started learning about the monetary policy, I realized nobody else was talking about. And I'm like, why isn't anybody else talking about this stuff? And I realized it's because it's not being communicated. It's not being force fed out there to the people. Now, a lot of economists, a lot of people out there, they are so focused, like they can see this picture so well. Like if I was to try and discuss or have a debate about a particular subject or a topic or whatever, like they would annihilate me because there's no way that I could see it as good and clearly and as in deep and informed as they can on all this. But what I feel is that I have stepped back and I'm not way up like 30,000 feet in the air with hundreds of millions of dollars looking down on the economy thinking that I got like all kinds of great view of it. I literally feel like I sit way up on the hill and I can see it like it's a big picture or big like event that's taken place in front of me, right? Not way up in the sky, but just more like an observer from a very like clear view. And when I see it from this fashion, it's like it, and I don't even like really have any concern about which way it goes. And like, I mean, I don't really have investments. I don't have businesses. I'm not really even that concerned about where the housing market goes. I mean, if it goes down, oh, well, I wasn't planning on selling my place anyway. I was kind of looking to pick up property if I could. So that's a good thing for me. If it goes up, hey, even awesome. I bought a house and I mean, hell, there's no way to find wealth in through property ownership. So either way, I'm cool with it. Like I don't have any expectation of the future of what it is that's going to take place that's going to be like good or bad or ugly or awesome or anything like that. I just want to look and see what it is. And that's where I think I've really come into a different view of the economy than most people have out there, especially when it comes to monetary policy strategies. I see it so differently now than just about every single person out there. I feel like I am the only one. Like literally out of everybody out there, I don't think anybody shares the same kind of information or idea about what's going on like I do. The only other people I can find talking about this stuff is the Federal Reserve itself, because that's where I got the information. Nobody else seems to read their speeches as consistently, going as far back as I have, to establish this theory. If you don't know all these different speeches, if you didn't listen to the communications throughout the different years and pinpoint and hold on to some of the ideas that they were talking about, not letting them go. Right? That was the thing. Like, I don't let it go. Somebody says something to me and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to remember that. And you're going to wish I hadn't, because I'm going to, like, someday I'm going to bring that back up. And you're going to be really surprised when I do, because I don't know why it is, but I got a memory that can like recall stuff, like it's almost like video shorts that play in my head. Like something will happen and it'll be like shunk, right, and it'll be like this 10-minute memory or a 5-minute memory or something that I will have, and I just won't let it go, and it'll be there forever. And one day somebody will say something and it'll trigger that, and I'll be up with it, and I'll be like, we were doing this on one particular day and you said that, man, and I'll describe things that were happening around at the time because it's that impactful to me. Well, that's the way I kind of handle these speeches. Is it's like, once it's said, it's just like, okay, I'm going to remember you said that, and as everybody else kind of forgets about things, I don't. I was just like, I will bring that up 5 years later, 10 years later. Don't think that I won't. All right. What time is it? Oh my gosh, it's almost 3. Okay. Intentionally or unintentionally? Jack, it's not complex. It's just that we are let out of some key information. Therefore, we cannot come to our own conclusions. But I think, Jack, you can. I think you can. I think you can. I mean, I guess it depends on how it is that you position yourself and the information that you are looking for. But like for me personally, when I think about what it is that the Federal Reserve is up to, I don't put that much faith in the idea that like a lot of other people have. As far as like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how many times that I have heard that the Federal Reserve is lying. They straight up lie. They lie, 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 lie. But yet, right now, everybody is convinced about their interest rate cuts. Like, all of a sudden, the Federal Reserve tells the truth. I mean, I don't get that. Like, everybody says every word coming out of the Federal Reserve's mouth is a lie. But then the one day that they say something that they want to hear, then all of a sudden they're telling the truth. It's just like, what's going on here? And now I know that if it's being said on a mainstream media, like if I got the information out of a news article, or if I'm seeing it being said on like, a news broadcast or something, most likely, and it's a Federal Reserve policy or something, most likely that is propagandized information to guide the forward guidance, right? To push the forward guidance out there. To be, that's the credible threat that's happening. It's the statements that they make inside of their speeches to each other. Those are the communications that I feel are more accurate to the honest Federal Reserve and their intentions, because the things that they communicate to each other is so different from what they communicate out there to the mainstream media. And it's funny because once you see it, once you recognize it for yourself, it becomes almost like, really, it becomes clear. It's just like, most people don't listen to the Federal Reserve speeches or those communications to the other central bankers out there. They only listen to the press conferences, the other interviews, the mainstream media presentation. That's the only thing they ever listen to, is the mainstream media presentation of it. Now, I listen to that, but I listen to it because that's the forward guidance. Right? But that's separate. That's like separate from their communications to the other central bankers. There's two communications that are taking place. I can see it. Like, I can see it just as clear as day. Most people don't see that. They don't even know that there's two communications. And so therefore it makes it very difficult for them to recognize where the credible threat is and what the I guess the insider language, is. I'm not sure how to say that, because it's not hidden. It's totally public. I mean, I got all of them to my, I can read as many as I want. There's not like they're hidden from you or they're lost in, some kind of archive out there. They're presented right there at the Federal Reserve website. You don't have to go looking very hard for them. But yet the presentation that you see on the mainstream media is way different from the communications to the other central bankers. And that's what I feel that I have recognized far beyond what most people have. In fact, just about everybody. I don't know anybody who looks at it that way. They recognize that the Federal Reserve has a communication style that is very unique. They use like, a lexicon that is very hard to decipher. It's like everything that they do seems to be done in some sort of secrecy. And I understand that there's a lot of economists out there who can recognize not only the verbiage that they use, the style in which that it's done, all this stuff, like they recognize that, but yet they haven't internalized the credible threat theory going back all the way to Ben Bernanke's speech. Like they don't know about the gold machine. Nobody talks about that. Occasionally you'll hear something about forward guidance or signaling, but for the most part, most economists don't incorporate that into their ideas. Almost none. I mean, like very, very rarely will you hear anybody bring up the neutral interest rate, which is the real reason why the Federal Reserve needed to even have the credible threats to begin with, is because of the neutral interest rate, which is the interest rate that's neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. It's when the Fed is neutral. Well, that neutral interest rate is really close to zero, and what they refer to as the effective lower bound. So if they go to stimulate the economy and they dropped interest rates, they would have to drop them all the way to zero. And even if they did, they still wouldn't get far enough below the neutral interest rate to be a real stimulative tool. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about that being a case right now. Everybody's talking about, oh, well, the weakening jobs market is going to force the Federal Reserve into lowering rates. And I'm thinking, the unemployment rate is still historically low. Like comparatively, it is really, 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 really low. Right? To just go and bring up the chart of unemployment, just Google unemployment FRED, right? The Federal Reserve site of it, and you can go and look at the graph for yourself, and you're going to see that unemployment has been incredibly low for a very long time. And we are, even though it has risen quite a bit, still historically incredibly low. So when people are talking about the weakening jobs market, it was just like, well, yeah, kind of weakening. It's still incredibly low unemployment numbers. And now that they got low inflation with stable prices, they have achieved their dual mandate. To me, like outside of the mainstream media narrative, the Federal Reserve is achieving exactly what they are mandated to do and what they said that they were going to do. And everything that they're doing is exactly like in line with their policy. Like I don't see anywhere where they have screwed up. They did exactly what, like, I'm not appreciative of it. I'm not trying to say that. And the Fed, right? I mean, it's just like I'm not appreciative of any of this stuff. I'm just saying that from what I have read of their communications, this is exactly what they said that they were going to do from 20 years ago, from 20 years ago. And so, like, to me, it's not a surprise. They don't seem like they're shooting from the hip. It doesn't seem like they're like lost control. All the stuff that they're communicating to the other central bankers is like very different from what they're communicating out there on the mainstream media. And so it's just like, okay, well, I guess I'm the only one then. If I'm the only one who's going to do this, then I'm the only one who's going to do this. Because everybody else seems to have like, 2% target in mind, and I don't know, like hyperinflation and all the other stuff. Like, I don't know. They have like all these really weird delusional ideas about what's really happening out there in the economy. And I get why. Like, I get it why. I mean, it's just like if you listen to the mainstream media for your information, and even like some of the great economists out there, if you listen to them, you're most likely not going to hear about how the monetary policy strategies are really operating, because really that's only communicated to the other central bankers out there. And even think about this, like we were just recently talking about a European Central Bank, the European Central Bank working paper on average inflation targeting and what that really means, since the Federal Reserve didn't give any kind of timeline for figuring out the average inflation rate. This is a working paper discussing the monetary policy, the of average inflation targeting, right? The flexible average inflation targeting that the Federal Reserve is going for, which means that they may have an appropriate monetary policy seeking to achieve inflation that is moderately above 2%. The European Central Bank, and I went and tried to read through some of this. It is incredibly, like, I mean, I thought the Fed speeches were complicated. Holy crap. This is incredibly complicated what they are going through, but they are trying to break down and understand what the hell the Federal Reserve means by flexible average inflation targeting. Like, even the European Central Bank doesn't get it. Like, they don't know. That's how, like, secretive this stuff is. In fact, they even talk about it. I wish I had brought it up because they talk about the public's, like, misunderstanding of the statements. Like, they even talk about that part of it when the Federal Reserve comes out, and then the people misunderstand what it is that was communicated. Right? And that's the credible threat. That's the credible threat within it. And the ECB recognizes it, but they don't necessarily recognize it in the sense that they are doing it on purpose to guide the markets. They're saying, okay, well, they're keeping it secretive. We got to figure out how they're figuring out this average inflation rate, and they got all these crazy formulas for it. And it's really, like, it's pretty interesting to just kind of think about for a second that the European Central Bank itself doesn't quite understand what the Federal Reserve's monetary policy strategy is, and they have a 42-page working paper to try and break down what that is. See, this is like, that's how secretive this is. It's not secret. That's how like, how do I put it, man? It's because it's not a secret. If it was a secret, I wouldn't know about it. The ECB wouldn't talk about it. Jerome Powell wouldn't have come out on August 27th of 2020 and just gave a press conference clearly stating it out there. What they did is they didn't correct the public's assumptions. That's what happened. They didn't correct the public's assumptions. It's the greatest gaslighting in history. Like, by far the greatest, because how many times have you heard the Federal Reserve is going for a 2% target? That has been communicated so vastly throughout the entire, like, every media outlet. Every single person talks about a 2% target. They look at the Federal Reserve and say they don't see anything other than a 2% target. The only people who don't see a 2% target is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve doesn't look at a 2% target. They look for average inflation rate over time. And which means that they may have monetary policies set to achieve 1% inflation or 3% forever. Never once ever being at 2%. Never once targeting 2%. They could be at 1% and 3% forever and still achieve the 2% average inflation rate over time. It's the long run inflation expectation of 2% that the Federal Reserve is trying to lock in. And it's working. It's working right now. So, like, I don't feel like I missed it. I feel like I have been, like, trying to point out and show how this is actually playing out. As everybody a few years ago was telling me that I didn't know anything about inflation, I don't understand money printer, and that hyperinflation was going to destroy the entire world. And I'm like, no, just listen to the Federal Reserve itself. Listen to their monetary policy. Listening to what they are trying to communicate to the other central bankers out there, but don't listen to the mainstream media unless you are wanting to see the credible threat itself. All right? That's the mainstream media. Their true monetary policy is discussed amongst themselves and then not corrected out there. Thank you, everybody, for hitting that like button. We got 105 likes with 200 people, man. That is so awesome. Hit the like button, folks. Yes, please do. 25 million basis points. Is that what you're saying? All right, I got the Canadian silver coin now. Hey, good for you, Cody. Right on, man. I love the Canadian silver coins. The Canadian silver, it's 999 stuff, so it's like, that extra 9, which makes it unique. But then also, they have some of the greatest looking, like the polish, the quality of the coins. They are just so beautiful. Like, I have always appreciated Canadian maple leaves, and then all the stuff that comes out of the Canadian mint. I have I have a 10th ounce gold coin, and I have quite a few maple leaves that are Canadian, from the Canadian Mint. So good for you, Cody. Keep stacking that stuff up, bud. Uh, Don, you're incorrect, but if you aren't interested in what Simon is saying, you're welcome to find someone else to be. Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Brody, and thank you, Don, for checking things out, man. If you don't appreciate the stuff, yeah, you're more than welcome to step out and, go find somebody else who can share this information with you. But there's nobody else. I guarantee you, there is nobody else who's sharing this information. Right? And the thing is like, I don't have to I mean, you may not like my opinion. That's fine. I mean, I don't like most people's opinions out there, especially when it comes to the economy. And I don't expect anybody to appreciate or want my opinion from everything either. But to say that this information is inaccurate, that's wrong. That is wrong. And I will say that. That's not my opinion. I left links. I will leave links into every video that I do. There's 3 speeches. The Ben Bernanke speech from November 21st, 2002, deflation and how to prevent it from ever occurring here. November 21st again, which is really weird. 2018, 16 years later, right? November 21st, monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world. And then another speech, and I can't remember the exact title of it, but it was August 27th of 2020. Go read those 3 speeches. Go read those 3 speeches and internalize every single word that is being said inside of those 3 speeches, and you will see this too. You will see the credible threat theory. You will understand it, but you'll have to understand the neutral interest rate. You're going to have to understand the effective lower bound. You're going to have to understand the a lot of the issues that were being faced by the Federal Reserve at the time in order to know this stuff. If you are blaming politics, if you think that it is Bidenomics, if you have all this other stuff that has already formed your belief, then you're going to have a very difficult time trying to break that, because there is so much misunderstanding within that, because that's not the monetary policy. I'm not saying that those political actions didn't happen. What I'm saying is that that's not monetary policy. Once you recognize monetary policy for what it is, then you'll have excluded politics out of it. And then you will see that this is a decade-long situation coming from the Federal Reserve, and really has a lot to do, or pretty much everything to do, with the neutral interest rate being very close to the lower bound of zero. And this gave the Federal Reserve very little room to operate with interest rate adjustments, especially stimulating the economy. So knowing that was the case, and that was back in 2008, hey, we're talking back in the great financial crisis. So, I mean, we're going on, 15 years ago or better. So understanding that was the real issues that were being faced. Well, then you can incorporate the other thoughts and ideas that you have, but you better take that on as the base, because that's what the Federal Reserve is looking at. Right? And again, this isn't me, this is the Fed. Right? My opinion on a lot of stuff, people are like, dude, you're way off base on a lot of these things, whatever. That's fine. I mean, as far as my opinion might be off base for a lot of people to understand, that's cool. But when it comes to the monetary policy strategies and the things that the Federal Reserve is doing, that stuff is not my opinion. This is the reality of the situation. Now, I might interpret it a little weird for you or something of that nature. Hell, I can't read very well. I stutter a lot. I can't pronounce some words. That part might be a little frustrating for a lot of people out there, but the actual information, the facts, the detailed idea of what it is that the Federal Reserve is trying to do with their monetary policy strategy, that is very accurate. Right? That is accurate, and once you see it, then it becomes quite clear. It's just like, wow, man. I mean, I can't believe I didn't see it before. But once it's explained and understood, it's just like it's literally like the whole picture just starts all of a sudden, the obscurities are no longer obscurity. Here, Luther, I'm going to read one statement that you have, because you owe me already $10 for reading 2 of your comments before. You have nothing of this. I don't know why you're here. Like, because every time I do read one of your comments, it's always criticizing and contradicting and all this other stuff of my information. I don't know why you're here, man. You show up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're there at lunch, you're there all the time. So you really love the channel, even though you kind of despise it. But you really do love this channel. I don't make a prediction because I already did. All right. I already made my prediction about 9 months ago. 10 months ago on Mike Zuber's channel at the end of last year when everybody was seeing the dot plot map and they were saying, oh, there's going to be 7 rate cuts and all this other stuff. He says, is there going to be rate cuts coming this year? And I said, probably not. I said, if there is one, you're probably going to find one towards the end of the year, and it's going to be a symbolic rate cut just to establish and make sure that people are knowing of the credible threat, that they will do it. But it's not going to have a whole lot of impact on the economy. So now, if you want me to make a prediction, I already did, bro. I did it a long time ago. I did it on Mike Zuber's channel. Go watch the Mike Zuber interview I did at the end of last year, and you can go and hear my prediction for yourself. Now, because I don't sit here and constantly reiterate it, it's because I don't find it to be important at all. That much importance, 0. Okay? So that's the only question that or only statement or only comment that I'm going to read from yours ever again, unless you pay me. All right? So I already made my prediction. I don't conveniently not make the prediction. I don't find it to be important. And I already made my prediction on Mike Zuber's channel. So go look at it there if you want one. Okay? All right, moving on. Man, look at all these comments. Okay. Blaming boomers. Yeah, good luck with that. All right. Yeah, Larry, he kind of does. All right. Boomers fund their retirement and assisted living with their property values. Yeah. Nah, 25 cut will do nothing. Well, of course it won't. Like, I mean, even if there was a 25 basis point cut, again, it takes 6 months to a year before you can pull some of that lag, the lag between the cuts and the actual impact. You might be able to pull that up a little bit, considering the forward guidance. Gee whiz, guys. Considering the forward guidance, you could probably move that timeline up a little bit. But for the most part, an interest rate cut doesn't affect the economy for 6 months to a year, because a lowering of interest rates then has to have people actually borrowing at that lower interest rate to have any kind of real impact on the economy. And a 25 basis point cut is, although good for some people, it's not that like it's going to send a whole rush of people in to go like, woohoo, look at these lower rates we get to go take advantage of. That's not the way it works. It's not even the way it works. Not to mention, the Federal Reserve generally doesn't want to lower interest rates unless they're trying to stimulate the economy. Like, that's what they say. Next time, when we go to stimulate the economy, the lowering of interest rates in order to do that. So if they're lowering interest rates, but they're not trying to stimulate the economy, that doesn't really make sense, because that's their ammunition for stimulating the economy. So again, I look at the 25 basis point cut, if it was to take place, which, could again, most likely happen as a symbolic cut, will have very little impact. I don't look at the cut as being anything. It's like, to me, that is so inconsequential to the bigger picture that it's like, might as well set that shit off to the side, because it doesn't mean anything. The communication and the way that people react to it and all that other stuff, that's huge. That has a huge impact on the economy. All right. Luther has love-hate relationship with the channel. Yeah, he does. I mean, the point being about that is that if you don't like the information, then go away. If you think it's wrong, go find somebody who's saying it right. I mean, I'm the only one who's talking about this stuff, so I must be wrong, right, Luther? I mean, I must be the only one who has dug through this stuff, figured out this monetary policy strategy, and realized that the Federal Reserve made all this stuff up to trick me. Because I'm the only one who seems to be talking about it. So they made up all this stuff. I found all this crazy idea of monetary policy strategies, and they hid it all in these speeches so that they could fool some dude sitting in a 99 Ford Explorer talking to people at 3 o'clock in the morning on YouTube. I mean, I can't believe they went through that much effort to trick me. Yeah, somebody willing to get mortgages at 7% instead of 7.25. So yeah, unless we get stimmies directly in the mailbox, I don't see lower population. So yes, I don't see it low. Avoid shorting BTC long term if you believe in crypto. I don't know if I necessarily believe in crypto, but I don't disbelieve it either. I'm kind of like agnostic on the whole idea. I mean, literally, I put $50 at it occasionally, I just say occasionally, once or twice a month. And I don't really think about it when I do it. I just like, okay, it's time to buy, just buy $50, and I just forget that I did it. And one day, if it's cool and it's big and it's huge and it's got worth millions of dollars or something like that, I'd be like, all right, I'm glad I did it and I'll have something for my kids. But my expectations of it are really, really low. Like I don't have any expectations of anything from it. And if it was to go to zero, I would have been like, yeah, that figures, like that's my attitude towards it. I don't really have any expectations for Bitcoin. Don't listen to these guys, bro. Been following you for years. They probably just seen your channel, then they don't get it. Oh, absolutely, bro. Is that at 80 2020? Yeah, I totally appreciate you, man. Thank you. BTC is one of those in for a life investment. In it for life, yeah. Damn, he caught us. The April Fool's prank is over. What? What is Cody talking about? All right. What did you think about the debate? What did I think about the debate? Well, I have to say that I'm going to have to say that Kamala won. She had the best hairstyle of the two of them. It didn't seem like it fell out of place at all. I wasn't impressed at all with either one of their hairstyles, but Trump didn't really pull it off in the way that I think Harris did. I think Kamala did a great job, having that, perfect hairstyle going, flawless the entire time. So, I mean, I'm going to have to say that Kamala definitely won the debate. Her hairstyle was perfect, and Trump, not so great. The point is that you think crypto is valid. The only direction for Bitcoin in medium and the long term is up. Oh, I agree with that, Captain. I mean, it's not going to come in any less supply. It's not going to. It's not going to come in any more supply, right? There's only going to be less available for people out there. It's a deflationary currency. The network effect is growing, right? Everything is on the positive side for Bitcoin. So, like, I'm not trying to knock Bitcoin being like, don't buy it. I buy it. I buy it once or twice a month, right? I mean, I'm going to do that forever. So, if it succeeds, cool. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's like literally the attitude I take towards it. I have no expectations on it. But I agree. Hey, if you want to be jacked up on Bitcoin, I listened to Mark Moss's presentation at the Rebel Capitalist, and he said something about $400 million Bitcoin. And I'm like, yeah, buddy, I want $400 million Bitcoin too, man. I have like a half a Bitcoin. That'd be like $200 million, right? Woohoo! But come on, man. I mean, really? The point is, okay, wait a minute, we already did that. When the banks start blocking your transactions, crypto comes in handy. Well, okay, like, people talk about that all the time. They say, oh, when the bank, denies you the ability to do transactions. And I'm thinking, okay, how often does that really happen to people? Like, I mean, I know it happens, but like, I don't know anybody personally who had their banks like seized and you can't do transactions. It was like a mistake, or they had like some fraud alert or something of like, legitimate reasons for security purposes that they had they couldn't access their money for a brief amount of time. But outside of doing illegal activities, I don't have any fear of not being able to access my money, right? Like that's a very low concern. Now, with that being said, I do have multiple banking accounts. Like I have different debit accounts that I could use at any given time that I don't use just a single bank. I have like a completely different bank accounts. And if one for one reason doesn't want to work, I just, I mean, I've had it happen where, my bank card was actually expired. Another time I couldn't find my debit card and all of a sudden I didn't have access to my funds. My concern was like very brief as I just pulled out a different card, and was able to continue on with business. So I already kind of diversify in that sense anyway because I don't like being in one location for anything. And it's, for the reasons that maybe you don't have access to it or they lock you out. But I have very little concern coming from like an authority coming down and saying, we're denying you, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Like that level of concern is very low for me. And so I don't buy cryptocurrencies for that particular reason, nor do I buy silver for that reason. I buy it for completely different reasons. Silver is a different reason why I buy crypto. I buy silver as an insurance policy because it is away from the third party claim. I mean, crypto, you have to have an on and off ramp if you want to be into cash on it anyway. I mean, I guess you could find somebody to like physically hand you cash and you can send them the crypto. But for the most part, most people are probably going to end up using some sort of an exchange to get on and off the crypto train, right? So if you're, got a bunch of Bitcoin, you're probably going to end up using Coinbase or something like that in order to eventually convert it over to fiat. You don't have to. There's other ways of doing it, but that's most likely the way it's going to go down. So you're still reliant on the third party, which makes you, have something with a third party claim to it. And that's the exchange part of things. Silver doesn't have that. Like it has that, but you don't have to use it. I mean, you could take a silver coin down to just about anywhere in any country. You go down to the bars and you start asking people, "Hey, man, I need a gallon. I need to get some gas. I got this, American Silver Eagle here. I got this Canadian Maple Leaf. Would you give me spot price? Maybe slightly under spot price. Bam, you got it sold. You got a gallon of gas. You're out the door. You're going, right?" Now, there's not a whole lot of items out there that you can do that with. I mean, firearms, you could probably do that in some areas to a lesser extent, but most firearms are fairly expensive, and, having a silver coin has a whole lot less risk. Somebody goes to rob you, just like, fine, here, keep it. I mean, it's just like, you're not given like a firearm, people will try and do something for it, right? But I mean, a silver coin, it's pretty small amount, and if you only have the one, then most likely, even if somebody was to rob you, they're not going to get that much from you. So again, I just look at silver as something completely different than cryptos. All right, let's cruise down here to the bottom. I mean, silver, at least physical, is always better, but the system itself is already digital. Swift is digital, system outdated. Yeah, I mean, I think I look at it differently. I mean, digital as opposed to a central bank digital currency or even cryptocurrencies. I don't look at it as the same as like a digital purchase with like say a debit card or a credit card. Because even though it's a computer transaction that's happening, generally what's going on like with Bitcoin, right? You go from this sender directly to that receiver. There's nobody in between. It's just those two, right? But when you do a debit card purchase, you're going to do a purchase, then it's going to go to a bank, who goes to another bank, who goes to a clearinghouse, that eventually ends up at the end user, right? So you have all these different intermediaries that go through that this payment has to go through. Where like central bank digital currencies, the idea of it, and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, it's a direct boom, peer to peer, bang, bang, right? There's not all these little intermediaries in between there taking a little portion of it, even though it's a digital transaction that's happening. Each one of those people are taking a little piece of the pie. Easy money with BTC is over for the potential 100 times instead of 8 times. Speculation on altcoins like XRP, which has a lot of naysayers right now, may be the path. I'm not Everybody else seems to be big into XRP. I'm like one of the few people who really is not. Like, XRP does not excite me at all. Mainly because of what it is that all the proponents are saying of XRP, saying what it's going to do, talking about how the future of XRP is, and essentially what they are talking about is things that the Federal Reserve is also communicating, but the Federal Reserve doesn't talk about XRP. Okay? Now, they do talk about stable coins. Right? They do talk about stable coins and stable coins being backed by the dollar and how their monetary policy transfers from their dollar right into anything that's being backed by the dollar. So if the stable coin is being backed by the dollar, monetary policy would transfer right into the stable coin. It also creates a situation in which that the government can now regulate the stable coins, and the Federal Reserve doesn't have to. The Federal Reserve can just deal with their monetary policy, and they can let the government do all the regulation of the stablecoin itself. Seems like a perfect system set up for me in the view of the Federal Reserve. Like, not perfect system for me. Like, I don't have a perfect system. My perfect system is understanding whatever the system is so I can deal with it. That's my perfect system. But as far as a perfect system that we need to use, there isn't one. I don't believe there is. All right. I remember some bum tried to sell me necklace and said it's silver and told him to F off. Well, good for you, Larry. That same thing happened to me. Like, I remember one time I'm off of work, right? This is a good story, I'll tell you guys. So I just got off of work and I'm walking to my car, right? And this dude comes pulling up and he's just like, he goes, "Hey man, where's the gas station or whatever?" And I was like, "Gas station?" I said, "Back there over at the grocery store, you know." And he goes, "Hey man, I need to sell something for gas. Do you want to buy this ring?" And I'm like, "A ring? What kind of ring you got?" And he shows me this big giant gold ring. And I'm like, "Oh, dude, you're talking to the right guy, man. Let me see that thing." And he drops this ring into my hand, and it's heavy, you know. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this thing is beautiful. It's all shiny, and it's like gold color." And I'm like, "How do I know it's not fake?" And he's like, "It's not fake, man. Here, look." And he takes a knife and he's scraping it. He's like, "Look, it's not plated or anything." And he's like, you know, he's like scraping at the ring. He says, "I'm desperate, man. I'll sell this thing to you." It's just like, "Feel it, man. $1,000. I'll give you, give me $1,000 for this ring." And I'm like, $1,000, man? No way. Not for this. You know, he was just like, "Well, how much will you give me? How much?" And I was just like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, "I'll give you $500 for this ring." Right? It's heavy, it's big, you know. And he was just like, he goes, "Okay, man, I'll take $500. I'm desperate." And I'm like, "This is too easy, man. This is messed up." And I was like, "Well, I don't have $500. Right? I don't have $500. I said, "I got to go down to the bank to get $500. Why don't you follow me down to the bank?" And I said, I'll go and get $500. I'll buy this ring off of you." And the guy was just like, he was like, "Okay, all right." So we go down to the grocery store, which is where my bank was at. And my wife worked at the grocery store, right, at the time. And so I go up to the dude and I'm like, "Okay, man, give me a minute." And he's just like, now he's got gold necklace too. Right. And he's just like, "Hey," he goes, "Hey man, I got this gold necklace too." He was just like, he goes, $1,000 for the necklace. Right. And it's big, heavy, beautiful necklace. And I'm like, "What?" So like, and then he pulls out like another, like, I don't know, he had another necklace or something. And he has like all this gold now sitting on his passenger seat. And now I'm like, "What in the world?" Like, I just wanted it to be real, right? I really, really wanted it to be real. But I knew it was fake, right? I just knew that there was something not right here. And it looked good. It was heavy. Like, he even had a magnet, and I'm like trying to screw with it, get the magnet to stick to it. And I'm like, "Shoot, man, this guy's probably gonna try and rip me off." I just feel that, kind of thing going on. And I'm thinking, but I really wanted it to be real. And so I told him, I said, "Okay, man." I said, "How much you want for all this?" And he was like, 2,000. And I said, "Okay, well, how about 1,500 for everything you got right here? All this gold, right? This big pile of gold. I'm guessing is like, 3 ounces, 4 ounces of gold." And he was like, "Okay, man." He was just like $1,500 for all this. And I said, all right. And I threw my keys onto this seat and I grabbed one of the necklaces that he had laying there. And I said, I'm going to take this in with me. And he was like, oh, no, no, man, you can't. I said, look, my car's right here. There's my keys, right? I'm leaving my keys. And it was to that old 99 Toyota Corolla, right? A $500 car. And I was just like, look, there's my keys, man. I can't go anywhere. You got my keys. I'll be right back with this, right? And the money. And he was like, okay, man, yeah, go ahead. And I said, all right, I take it in. I show my wife. She's so cool with it. And he was just like, yeah, go ahead. So I walk in and I knew something was up. And so I go and I go to talk to my wife. She's sitting back in the office doing some paperwork or something. And I walk up to her and I'm like, hey babe, look at this. I said, this dude's trying to sell me this necklace. And she looks down, she goes, ah, she just got like Tony for that. That guy got Tony last week or yesterday or something. That same style of necklace right there. She was like, looked at it, recognized, and knew some guy who had actually bought some of that fake gold off of him. And she was laughing at me. And she was like, you didn't actually buy it, did you? And I'm like, no, he's out in the parking lot right now. And she was just like, yeah, it's fake. It's fake as hell. It's like, I knew it was. And so I go back out there and I wasn't thinking to take my phone and turn it on and like record them. I was just like, at that point, I was just disgusted with myself and just wanted it all to be over. But I walk up there and I threw the necklace down on the seat and I grabbed my keys and I was just like, bro, get out of here, you damn crook. And he was just like, and he had his wife in the back, like she had this baby and she was like nursing the baby and stuff, like trying to be like, oh, help us out, please. And I was just like, you damn thief. And I was just like, no, man, you already ripped one of the guys off in there yesterday. I was just like, you were trying to get me today. And he was just like, oh, come on, man, be cool. And I was like, what are you talking about? I am cool, man. Get the hell out of here. And so I grabbed my keys and he just took off. But, yeah. Some guy tried to sell me some fake gold and I wanted it to be real. I so bad wanted it to be real. And I wanted to believe his story. And I wanted that gold and it was playing off my greed, but it didn't work. All right. Actually, there is a preferred system or better terms of banking, managing, not specifically addressing type, median of exchange. I don't know. Like, I look at the Cantillon effect of things, and there's no real way of preventing the economic forces that are underlying. So if you can recognize what it is that's happening, you can position yourself in any kind of environment, like any kind of economic environment. I feel that you could do well in. You just have to be able to recognize the economic forces for what they are. Now, a lot of times, we are a victim of circumstances, right? Like you are not going to be able to, like, I mean, people are like, well, if you were in Ukraine, or I'm like, oh god, I'm not in Ukraine, right? I'm not dealing with that. I am dealing with my life here in the Oregon coast doing my thing, right? It's not Ukraine. But I have my own economy that I have to deal with, and it's going to be very unique to me and not the same as what everybody else is going to be experiencing out there. And so again, like I don't look at an economy being good or bad. I just look at it as an economy and how it is that I position myself. It's only bad if you position yourself incorrectly for what's going on. A lot of times people would be like, man, I did so well at my business. I did so well all throughout the 90s or whatever, and then it got into 2000 and Clinton took on, and then from that point on all hell broke loose and it was horrible, and like that was it. And I was never able to recover, and it's all that administration's fault. And I hear stuff like that and I'm thinking, okay, well, you could probably blame a lot on there, but you also need to blame the fact that you weren't adapting to the situation that was changing. Because as the situation changed, you were being very hopeful in the idea that it was going to stay the same, or that it would revert back, or that things would get better at some point. And this is the mistake that a lot of people end up suffering through, is that it's not going to go back. the way it was. What you have to do is constantly evolve to the situation that is happening out there and to understand it for yourself, because not everybody is going to be doing the same thing that you're doing. You go and you look at the neighbor and you're thinking, damn, you just went and bought a new truck. How do you afford to do that, man? I wish I had a new truck. Oh man, that guy has this brand new truck. He's so awesome. How did hell he's got like basically he makes about the same amount of money I do. I don't understand how he has this. Well, 5 years later, he's still making that truck payment, has struggling to pay the bills, has no way of taking off like any time of work, can't go on vacation, can't do any of that stuff that is like fun and exciting and decent in life because he has all his payments tied up into that truck. But we don't recognize that part of things. We only see him out there washing his truck every weekend, looking like he's happy as a clam. And we thinking, man, we wish we had that in our lives. But we don't have a truck, but we can pay our bills on time and we can travel wherever we want to, basically whenever we want to. We can have like, fun things in our life that doesn't seem to take away from our efforts or anything like that. Well, we don't have a new truck, but we got all these other things in our life. See, our economy is so much different than what the neighbor's is going to be if he's bought a new truck. Well, I don't buy a new truck. That means I get a chance to buy a barbecue, because I collect barbecues for some reason. I didn't realize that until a few months back. But I have 9 different ways of cooking outside. Like I have 9 different styles of barbecues and smokers. It's funny because like most people have like one or two. For some reason, I have a bunch of them. Now, to me, that's like a luxurious life to be able to cook outside in so many different ways. Right? Most people look at that and go like, big deal, bro. Like, I got my Traeger, I'm cool, and I'm thinking, oh, I got a Traeger and I got a Weber and I got a 10 and I got, I got all this stuff. And I think about it, it was just like, I can only use one at a time. And I mean, I could use them all at a time, but what are you going to do with that much meat if you cook it all? But that's my thing. That's like what I like to do. I like to, barbecue. I like to cook outside and I like to be out doing that kind of thing. So that's what I spent some money on. And it's not like I spent a lot of money on it, but that's my little hobby, right? Pretty cheap considering what most people's hobbies are. But we all find pleasure and satisfaction in different things. Working harder means just working harder. I guess some people just like to work hard. Most people still like more money better than work hard. Yeah, Captain Happy, I agree. I used to think that in order for it to be valuable or worthy, you had to work hard for it. Like, if you didn't bust your ass very hard and it was like difficult to do and you were beat up from it and you didn't sweat, like all this stuff, if you didn't do it, then it wasn't worthy or it wasn't fair or it wasn't right. Yeah, this is the way I used to feel. I had imposter syndrome really bad feeling when the channel first started taking off because it was like, whoa, what is this going on? Like, this isn't right. This isn't me. This isn't, I'm like, how am I deserving of, all this stuff going on? This doesn't seem right at all. It seems too easy, right? Because I'm used to things being very, very hard. Like everything in my life was always hard. I had to work hard. I drank hard. Bills were hard. Everything was hard in my life. And yet this thing seemed to be somewhat easy. And I wasn't trying to do it. I was just trying to put out videos and share my opinion and just enjoy the making of videos and being on YouTube and learning and discussing things. And this was like, that was it. Like that was my whole thing going on. And when it started making money, it was like, "Ooh, what's that?" Like, I don't know what that's okay. I mean, I'll take it, but I don't get it. Like, this doesn't seem right. I'm not working very hard, or it doesn't feel like I'm working hard for this, and so therefore it doesn't feel right. And that's literally the attitude I had about it. And I was very like standoffish about it at first. And then like as time went on, it was just like, okay, man, no, this is the way it is. You've dedicated your entire life into understanding this in order to be able to come out and share your thoughts and ideas with people. This is the reward that you get for bringing this value to the people out there. You get this, this is what happens on from that. And so I finally was just like accepting of it. It was just like, okay. Okay, all right. I did work hard to get here. It didn't feel like I necessarily worked hard because I was just doing what I enjoyed doing, but it was a lot of dedication and work and effort to break through all these monetary policies speeches and old theories and concepts in order to form these ideas. That was kind of hard, but not really. I mean, it was just like kind of like a hobby of mine that I was just dedicated to. So here we are with the ability to put out videos and generate some cash revenue from it, and it's fairly easy. Like it's like, coming out at 2 o'clock in the morning and speaking for 2 hours is like, kind of an odd thing to do, but it's not like it's that difficult to do. It's fun to do. In fact, it's weird that I can make a little bit of money having fun. Like that's holy crap. That's possible. It's not like hard work doesn't that's not fun's not involved with hard work, right? If you're having fun, then it's not hard work. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be any way you want it. Hard work is just the meaning that you're giving it. That's it. Easy work, again, it's only the meaning that you're giving it. The value that you are bringing. That's the meaning that's bringing you the reward. It's because you are bringing value. Period. Whether it's hard work to do it or it's easy work to do it, in your opinion, it doesn't matter. It's the value that you bring, and that's why it's rewarded. And so understanding it in that fashion, it was just like, okay, so it's all about bringing value to the table, bringing value, just give it away. Just here, you can have it. You can have it all, right? And whatever comes from it will come from it. And I found that not caring about the money, like, I would love to take the sponsorships because they're always begging me to take, here. I mean, all these sponsorships are always offered up to me. And I could go for the money in that fashion, but it doesn't feel good to me. And I don't know what kind of value that brings. Right. I mean, I guess it could bring some value, like introducing you to a product that you may not have heard before, but that's pretty small. All right. That's a pretty small value considering what it is that I normally do out here, which I think is huge value. So if I'm bringing huge value and I get a little bit of reward for it, perfect, right? That's what I'm looking to do. And the more I do it, the more I feel like I'm rewarded from it. So I don't try to go for the money. I don't try to do any of that stuff. I just come out here and I just share my thoughts and try to bring, you know, something that is useful to the table, and naturally, the forces out there will just bring it to me. I'm kind of surprised though. People are still fooled by vanity in this current almost life and death environment. I'm not. I'm not surprised by that at all because we're in a nation of luxurious living. So vanity is a very big luxurious thing, right? Is to look good and appear good and have good and all that other stuff. It's all very much a luxury item, right? To be that way. And since we're in such a luxurious, or since we're in such a high abundance of money flowing state, right? New money constantly flowing in, everybody's dove into luxuries, which now has this appearance of being normal, but it's not, right? This is not normal living. And that's why you see such weird, odd things happening within society, is because literally the luxurious life has given them the ability to act and behave that way. And before, they couldn't have done that. They couldn't behave this way because they simply couldn't afford to do it that way. They had to go out there and they had to be polite. They had to be respectful. They had to be generous. They had to be all these things in order to make it through society. But now it doesn't seem like anybody has to do that anymore because they have all the luxuries they could ever have wanted. Before, if you were very limited and you had to work for what it is that you got, it doesn't matter if you worked hard or not. That's your meaning that you're giving it, but that you had to bring out some sort of value and effort in order to get the things that you needed. Well, now, I mean, people don't have to put out that much value. They can put out like appearance of value. It's like, I mean, I guess entertainment value maybe a little bit, but they can put out this appearance of value and just get this massive amounts of luxury that just pour into them. And they don't even really have to try that hard for it. In fact, it's like, quite the opposite of it. That only exists in a luxurious nation, a high standard of living. If we didn't have that going on here, those people could not behave that way and expect to make a life out of it. All right. Working harder means you just working harder. I guess some people. Oh, we already read that, didn't we? All right. Let me cruise up here. In that Money Masters document, there's a lot of history also, including tally sticks from the British. Yeah. Good morning, family. Yeah. What time is it? All right. Almost 4 o'clock. I want to go to bed, guys. All right. I'm starting to get weirded out by the same wavelength I'm on with you. Yeah. Well, the thing is like, you figure out in life at one point, like I was 40 years old when I was just like, oh my gosh, man, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? I got this little kids. I got a little kid, little Freddie. I got, how old was he? He was like 6, 7 years old at the time when Freddie was born, my older son. And I am circling the drain, and I'm literally like, every night I would sit there at the end of my bed like this, trying to figure out what it is that I was going to do. And I would sleep like 2 or 3, and like I never really slept very well anyway. But I would sleep 2 or 3 hours a night if I was lucky. And most of the time, that's the way I was. I was just sitting there trying to figure out what it is that I was going to do. And I spent so many nights like that, you know, and it was hard to just even be motivated to do anything in life. It was hard to just, like I even had the little hobby farm, a little chicken business, raising birds and raising for eggs and having the little garden and stuff like that. And it was very frustrating, life was, I mean, it was frustrating in the sense that the bills were hard. I had bills and debt and I couldn't pay them or anything. Cars were breaking down. And that was difficult. That sucked. Like all that hard stuff when you don't have any money, like I experienced all that stuff and I lived that way for a very long time. But what I found very interesting about that time is that I also found that I was also one of the happiest, considering that I didn't have a whole lot going on. I just had like the chickens and the garden and the little piece of property the neighbor had, like, goats and pigs and stuff like that. So we were kind of like, a nice little neighborhood there. We didn't really go anywhere else. We just kind of stuck in that neighborhood, and our entertainment was, trying to deal with the farm and I found like it was a lot easier in a sense that there wasn't so much complication. I mean, it was difficult to pay the bills and stuff, but it wasn't like I didn't have anything going on in my like YouTube and networking and all that other stuff. I didn't have anything like that going on. And so when the time was good and you were feeling good about it, it was really simple and awesome and pleasant. We ate good food, had plenty of it, had a very simple being. Like we didn't have cable or anything at the house, no TV or anything. It was just, just us there. But I could feel it. Like it was just like if I keep going down this road, I'm not going to be able to have anything. Like I will have no more car. I won't have this house. I won't have a job. I won't have anything. I will be completely done. And I felt like I was literally like a month away from that sort of position in which that I was like, it was all going to come undone. And so that's when I did. It was just like, okay, so quit drinking. I mean, at least like, I mean, maybe deep down inside, I just knew that it was some money that I would be able to save by not spending it on beer. But giving up drinking was the turning point in my life. Like it was obvious that was the thing that sent me off on a new parallel. And once I started off on that new parallel, it was like, I'm not going back. Like I can't go back. In fact, I'm scared to go back, right, to anything that was even remotely close to that because of how close I had actually come. So with that, it's just like, okay, so I have one direction that I'm headed, and that's onward and upward. And I'm not going to go back to, consuming alcohol ever again. In fact, my money is going to be spent on things like stocks and silver and purchasing the house and stuff like that. Like, I'm going to be wise with the money, and I'm putting it into things that are going to have some sort of return to me, or at least a position in which that I feel that they're going to have some sort of return to me. But I'm not going to chase pleasure. And when I did find, like, after some time like had gone by, and I'm like, okay, we've gone by, we've got the house, we got, why don't you go ahead and just relax and chill out for a little bit and actually enjoy the fact that you can make some money at it. Like, go and do some pleasurable things. And when I found that I did that, immediately started resulting in pain. Like, the money was gone, the experience wasn't what I had hoped for. Maybe, like, something fell apart for whatever reason. It's just like things didn't work out very well when I would chase the pleasure. But then I found, okay, just chase excellence, right? Just go for the excellence. I found pleasurable experience would just happen, like get invited to go speak in Vegas and, you know, go down to, again, to like the Rebel Capitalist and all these other things. And so, like, I'm not taking a vacation to go anywhere because I'm actually spending my money to go to these economic conferences, but then I love going to them. So I enjoy being there. I enjoy the experience and the adventure and everything that goes with it. That I go and relax and enjoy sights and, vacation kind of style stuff. No, I didn't. But I really enjoyed what I did do. So that's good enough, right? It's a working thing, but yet to me, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun. It feels like excitement and, enjoyment and stuff like that. Like, that's the way I feel about it. So it all works out. Like, it all works out. I'm going to moonshine my way to fame and fortune. All right. Alcohol is funnier when you're young, but the more older you get, the more the downside of it starts to kick in. Yeah. Stop drinking alcohol. Take psychedelic instead. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not big into, like, I'm in the Pacific Northwest, right? So psilocybin cyanescens, psilocybin azarescens, psilocybin similancitas, all that stuff grows like hugely around here. And I've done them, like, but we didn't microdose, like we megadosed, when we were doing it, and there was no, like, I didn't see any medical benefit from it at all, like none. And from my experience of it, I find it very difficult to think about it being like a medical use kind of thing. Um, I get it. There's been plenty of studies. There's so many people who have, sworn by by the by the psychoactive qualities of the psilocybin poison and mushrooms or whatever. Like, I totally get that, but my experience of it says don't screw with that stuff, right? Not in that fashion. And so I don't, right? That's not for me anymore. That was a thing that I had done a long time ago. And again, like, I'm not trying to say, for other people out there, but me personally, I don't see it that way. And I probably will never see it that way. But that's just because of all the experience that I've already had with it. And yeah, but again, we didn't microdose, we megadosed. All right, mushrooms are the new grift now that weed is legal. Yeah. I took mushrooms about a lot. They were cool, but I didn't make me stop drinking. Yeah, and I didn't even think that were that cool. Like, I mean, it was just like you laugh a little bit and whatever, and you got the smile that you can't get rid of. But as far as like the intense, like, man, it hits you and like you feel like, oh man, I'm super high, and then a few minutes later, it's just like, I don't think the stuff is working, and it was just like, I don't feel anything, and the next thing you know, you're like, whoa, oh man, and the things are bending and moving, and there's like all kinds of stuff is happening. A few minutes later, it's like, I think it must have worn off. A few minutes later, oh god, here it comes again. So it's just like, vroom, vroom, it hits you with these huge waves. And at least that's the experience that I had from it. And some of my buddies, they just loved it. They thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And I just felt like, man, my stomach would be all tightened from it, and it'd be like, feel like I was about ready to throw up, and then like, this that wave of like, feeling cool, and then feeling high, and then feeling all right, and then feeling high, and then it was just like, man, okay, enough of this. All right. The fact that psychoactive means that you can't know what they're doing for someone else. No, that's again, man, that's why I'm not trying to knock it for other people out there. But when somebody was like, no, dude, this is a total good medicine, whatever, I'll be like, not for me. Not in my mind. I'm not screwing with that stuff. Damn, it's getting late. I better get to bed soon. Yeah, Cody, I'm feeling that too, man. We're 2 hours, 20 minutes into this, and it's almost 4 o'clock in the morning. Dude, get some sleep. Yeah, I know. I'm about ready to do that. This has been a fun one. Nice to wake up fresh, no hangovers. Dude, I totally agree with you. Um, that was probably like the greatest thing about giving up drinking, because I would wake up every morning feeling like hell. And I just blamed it for, I didn't really blame the alcohol. I just said, man, I just have, a hard time waking up in the morning. I'll be all right by noon, and I would be. And then by 4 o'clock, I'd be itching for beer. And then at 5 o'clock, I'd be drinking. And we'd just do it all over again that night. So, yeah, once that was over and I started waking up, like sleeping through the night was like, eventually got to a point where I could sleep through the night at times. That was amazing. And then waking up not feeling like hell, and like going to work thinking I'm not, like, I don't have stomach pains. I don't feel like I'm going to throw up. I don't feel, frustrated and groggy and all that other stuff because I wish I was in bed. Like, I didn't feel any of that stuff. And man, yeah, talk about like a much better day on account of it. So yeah, I agree. I didn't miss the hangovers at all. Can you tell me what time you are going to do your next live stream next? Oh, like being there on YouTube, notifications are silent, so I can't wake up. So, Cody, I do one just about every single day during the week, Monday through Friday. I will do them at about 11 o'clock, and between 11 or 11:30 is usually when I start it. I will go for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and that's 11 to 11:30 Pacific Coast time. All right. So if you're looking to catch the weekly live streams that I do, the weekend ones, it's just a hit and miss whenever I happen to have the opportunity to get out. Usually I'm trying to plan something with the family. Today, Freddie had two soccer games, so it took pretty good chunk of the morning out, and then into the afternoon. So I did actually do one this morning. I did a video actually for TikTok that I reposted on YouTube here, and then again, if I happen to have the time. So weekends are just going to be a hit and miss. But during the week, yeah, between 11 and 11:30, usually it starts like 11:10 or so, Pacific Coast time, and you should be able to catch the weekly ones. Anyway, by the way, RFK Jr. said that any seed oil causes inflammation in the body. So yeah, it is the plague. Avoid it as the plague. Huh. All right, Yui, I see you recommend the rooms, and I'm seriously thinking about going. Oh, Larry, bro. Absolutely, man. I mean, it's hard to do like I found that it's better to maybe have somebody who's already going to kind of, just make you feel a little bit comfortable about being there, cuz walking into the room all by yourself alone is very intimidating feeling. Now, I guarantee you when you get in there, you're going to find nothing but support and encouragement to be there. Um So once you get there, like, as long as you can kind of handle a new group, strangers or whatever, they're going to be very accepting of when you go in there. But if you can find somebody who's already going, that way you can kind of understand what is happening and you kind of learn the ropes a little bit, so to speak, then it's going to be a whole different experience for you. Now, me personally, I didn't go to the rooms, right? I didn't do AA, I didn't do any of that stuff. Um, but I kind of did because my wife did do that. She was very involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. She was, very much involved in the steps and sponsors and, being sponsored, all the things. Like she did the whole thing. She read the big book all the way through, and she truly understands it, or as a hell of a lot more than I do anyway. And so I was able to get a lot of residual off of her. And it was very instrumental and it was very important. Now, I don't think I would have been able to quite get through it the same way if it wasn't for her. So she was my support team when it came to giving up drinking. I didn't have anybody else. I was essentially, it was her and just a couple of other close people who were near me and supportive and kind of in the same condition, doing the same things. There was a very few of us, right? There was just a very small group, and that's where I got my support from. But like most people probably are not going to have that kind of thing. So you're going to have to go and visit and meet some of the people in those rooms. And there's going to be some people that you resonate with and some people you don't. But the ones that you do resonate with, I assure you, when they start telling their story, you're going to relate to it and you're going to be like, okay, so I'm not alone in this thing. Like there is other people who are facing this exact same challenge that I am facing, and I can get through it the same as they do. And once you start the process, it's not like good times, like I always thought, man, if I could give up drinking, it would be like this whole wonderful, beautiful world would be existent. Well, if everything that is dark in my world is dark because I drink, and all this horribleness is just gonna just blink, just go away the moment that I quit drinking. No, 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 not even. Doesn't even go down like that. In fact, it's kind of worse, because what ends up happening is that if you were like me, you live in an alcohol-based consciousness, you don't really think about the horribleness that's really existing in the world or what's really going on inside of you, because you're covering it up with alcohol. And the moment that you give it up, you're exposing that stuff. And then it gets really ugly and hard, because now you're thinking, Jesus, now I got to deal with all these mental issues that I've been covering up with alcohol. And now I don't even have the alcohol to deal with that, right? So it's just like it gets kind of painful and ugly. Again, that's where the rooms really help out, because those people are experience that exact same thing. And it's hard to like go through life experiencing that and not being able to share that experience, or not to be able to share what it is that you're feeling and experiencing without other people who haven't experienced that themselves, because people just won't understand it. They won't know where you're coming from. They won't know what you're talking about. But then you go into those rooms and you're going to find a bunch of people who have lived that exact same thing, who are going through that exact same thing right now. And that's the importance of it. There's no other place you can really go to. I mean, you might be able to find a small group like I did with, a couple of people who are very involved with AA, who you can pick up some residual aspects of it from. But for the most part, you're going to have to go do it on your own inside of those rooms. And again, if you had a buddy there to help you out as far as just getting you through that process of getting into the door and sitting through the meetings and kind of understanding how that process works, then you can go off on your own. You'll be running and owning your own sobriety and living that new life. Because I assure you, once it's done, once you get through it a ways, it's a whole new world. It's a better world, right? I mean, me, I always think about it. I like every day, 4 o'clock, man, triggered, right? I'm thinking, gosh, it would be nice to drink a cold beer. I think about it. It would be nice to sit at that barbecue, one of my 9 barbecues, with that cold beer and cooking that meat and listening to some tunes. And like, I think about that. I think about it today. It's been years. It's been so long since I've had anything to drink. I still think about that. And I probably always will. And that's fine. That's what addiction is. That's how addiction works. And if you recognize it and you say, that's what it is. That's I own it. That's mine. That's not for somebody else to deal with. That is mine. Yeah. And you know, I get to drink an NA beer. I don't get to drink an alcoholic beer. Right. And that's me making that decision, owning my own sobriety, knowing that I'd rather have an alcoholic one because I would much rather feel the buzz and feel that goofy feeling and be all tingly and all the other stuff from it. But I also don't want all the repercussions that come from all that stuff, which is the reason why I gave it up to begin with. So I own it. Just own it all. Right? Own the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about it, right? And when you're feeling it, own that too. Own it. When you're in a fog and you can't think right because your mind is all messed up because you're so focused in on the drink and you just can't get your mind wrapped around anything else, you got this fog going on, own that too. That's your fog. It's not anybody else's to deal with, it's yours. Right? And there ain't nobody else who's going to come in and say, oh, here, let me deal with your fog. No, that isn't the way it goes down. You got to deal with your own. You got to own it all, every bit of it, the good, the bad, the ugly of it. All right. How can I get the deets, though? The deets. All right. I'm from Brisbane and just south of you. Oh, you guys are talking Australia. All right. You want to know how to know which games will win and which games will lose? You need to know where the money is. Oh, it would be a good after hard, long, hot day of toil. You can drink a lot for half your life or in moderation for your whole life. Taffy, I think that's an individual. I think that's an individual thing. I agree. I think there's people out there who can function just fine. They don't have to have a drink every night. They don't have to party every weekend. They can get hammered on a Friday and never drink for, 3 months after that. And just really have a real honest, decent relationship with alcohol. Like, I understand there's people out there who can do it. I don't know any of them. Just saying. And the ones who say that they do that, I think they're kidding themselves. Now, I'm not saying that they are or not. I mean, because, hey, everybody has to own their own stuff. I own mine. I don't, I'm not trying to take anybody else's away from them. But when I hear people say that, very rarely, like, I know a couple of people who will drink on occasion, and it will be just occasion, and they will use it for social, enhancer, and they have, it's everything is very cool with them, and like I do know a couple of people like that. But anybody who drinks regularly and says, "Oh no, man, I'm total control. I got all this other stuff," I think they kind of fool themselves. They might. I mean, I know I did. That's the way I did it, and I thought to myself one day, I don't remember when it went from every weekend to every day. I don't remember when that happened, right? And I think a lot of people, if they ask themselves that question and they can't remember when it happened, you might want to reconsider whether or not you might be an alcoholic. Again, like I'm not saying that's the indicator, and I think that's it for each an individual person to figure out and decide for themselves, because somebody else saying you're an alcoholic doesn't make you an alcoholic, right? Only you saying it is. And somebody else can look at you and say, you drink every single day and you puke all over yourself, you're an alcoholic. And you might be, I'm not. It's because it's your opinion on it. All right. Taffy for drunks. Don't look for sympathy. They usually selfish people. No, if team has 99% money, bet on it. It's going to lose or not cover. Huh. Not sure what you mean by where the money is in as in you can see the team that has bets placed for it. Let's see here. Interesting admittedly, I've never watched sports, but much less tried sports betting, but I will look into it. Huh. It normally starts from weekend to Friday, then it works its way back. This is the site to check. Okay. Alrighty, guys. It is 4 o'clock in the morning, and I haven't slept at all tonight, so I am going to end the live stream now. We got 198 people watching. This is awesome. At 4 o'clock in the morning, 198 people on here, and that's just so incredible. Thank you for being here. I love breaking down the essay. I think that's real important. A lot of the information that's within there. Understanding how the inequality really takes place inside of an economy. It gives you a much clearer understanding of what's going on. Blaming it on politics, I mean, there's plenty of room to go around, so, you can blame it on politics all day long. But the underlying economic forces can't be blamed on politics. That's something that's going to take place regardless. And when you understand it for yourself, then you can position yourself in a better way. Because a lot of times we'll position ourselves, or at least I think a lot of people would position themselves with the belief that the next administration will make it better, or that better times will come, or something of that nature. And sitting around waiting is going to leave you waiting your entire life. You'll be 70 years old thinking, well, next year is going to be the better year, right? It happens now, right now, because if you look out there, there's people who are killing it right now. There's people out there who have figured out what it is that they need to do to position themselves in the current environment to do incredibly well. And so figuring it out for ourselves is the only way. Thinking about it being an external problem, like the next administration will do better, or when the next administration, or when this administration leaves, or whatever. Like, I mean, putting it in that fashion will leave you always looking at that external for validation to whatever it is that you got going on in your life. Really, you have to own that. You have to take that back in for yourself and say, okay, I recognize the horse shit that's happening out there. I recognize the good stuff that's happening out there. I recognize what it is that I need to do, all right, for myself. And I'm going to move forward considering everything that's going on out there. I'm not limited. Right? I have abundance that's available to me, and I'm going to go out there and position myself to get it. Anybody can do that. There's people who are doing it every day right now, and they don't limit themselves, and they certainly don't blame anything out there. They might have plenty of blame to go around, but they're not blaming people for their shortfalls. They're out there moving. They're out there shaking and making it happen. So you can too, just like everybody else can. But understanding this for yourself, understanding it internally, these economic forces, the monetary policy, how it's going down, all that stuff, if you recognize it and own it for yourself, or just know it for yourself, it's going to be able to take what it is that you have in your life, and you're going to be able to position yourself a whole lot better on account of that. Just simple making decisions like buying a new car, right? And getting into a house or starting a business, any of that stuff. Like internalizing this stuff for yourself first, then gives you the most appropriate position to be in. Okay. Good night, everybody. Or good morning. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.